Okay, check one, two, check one, two. Should be live. Should have sound. Please let me know in the chat how everything sounds. Let's check. Looks like it's working. Great. Should be a good stream tonight. Usually I think that. Otherwise I wouldn't do it, I guess, probably. Why would you stream? But tonight I was kind of conflicted. I know that we're due for an Ask Me Anything AMA type of video, and so I was originally planning on doing that. But I had also prepared this stream about Sam Harris and Alex O'Connor's latest discussion with each other, and I basically just picked one. I don't even know exactly how, but I kind of just I looked at my clips and I was like, okay, I got a bit excited to talk about this. So we're going to talk about this one tonight. We will probably do an AMA next week. I'm working on some new content for this channel that's unique, and that is not something that I normally do. Some interviews in the works, so that's coming, and I will also be trying to focus more on just, I guess, my own work. I try and work that into everything. That's the point of this channel. I guess I'm just sharing right now, but um, it's a weird time in life, and uh, I can tell that there's change coming, but I also, you never really know how that plays out. So I want to say I have a plan, but I also plan to start streaming at like 8:30 or 9 every night. So, but just keep an eye out for new videos. I'm going to try and start announcing the streams earlier because I think that it will just give people more time to be aware. I don't want to just catch people off guard, and I'm trying to just make these streams a bit more accessible, if anything. But I really appreciate everybody who does watch and likes the videos. Please hit the like button; it really helps. Subscribes really helps. Hit the bell notification. Uh, Precisely because I usually announce the streams ahead of time. But if you want to get a notification for when I'm live streaming, which is every Thursday night, at least that's very consistent, please hit the bell notification. So we're going to talk about Sam Harris and Alex O'Connor's talk tonight. The link to their full discussion is down below. Sam Harris is one of those people that frustrates me. I'm just gonna be honest. I used to think he was really brilliant when I was in college, and I was definitely part of like the new atheist mindset, at least. But I have dramatically changed my worldview and my understanding of myself and of the world over the years. And Sam Harris now seems to me to be one of the most intelligent and eloquent people out there, but that is also to me seems very lost. And part of that is with like everything we talk about on this channel is limited by language. We say a lot of words like consciousness and self and mind and neuroscience and things like that. We don't really know what these words mean because we kind of use them interchangeably, and they're not interchangeable if they're going to be meaningful. There are no interchangeable words in a language that are perfectly interchangeable. In context of an individual, communicating with another individual, sometimes they can be interchangeable, but because they're close enough, and because somebody else's I guess perspective of a word is of two different words might be the same, like smart and intelligent, which is not, they're not the same word. They don't have the same meaning if they really mean anything outside of just kind of a casual sense. But the casual use of these words is only really useful if it's built on the technical understanding of these words. And at least over time. Over time, if you don't have a technical definition that's unique to for each word, then it loses its meaning over time, and if you can use it for a while in conversation. We're seeing that, and you start hearing people say things that don't seem to make any sense, like consciousness is an illusion, the self is an illusion, there is no self, there is only one self God, basically, and we don't exist, things like that. And that is kind of obviously just a prioritization of secondhand information above firsthand information, and which is a failure of thinking. So they talk about a lot of that in here. I think Alex O'Connor is brilliant, often brilliant. I don't want to say brilliant, that some people are brilliant or some people are fools, because foolishness or brilliance or genius or idiocy are moments that we all have, and some people have more of one than the other, but we all have moments of genius. Everyone who's ever lived has had, I would imagine, a moment of genius, and also moments of idiocy. I know I have. So I think that Sam Harris, though, is a very interesting person to listen to, because he definitely is a thinker. He is his own. He doesn't just take on the ideas of others very much. Everybody does a little bit, but he is an individual, I will say, even when he's wrong. And Alex O'Connor has really. I used to also be kind of. He would say this. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but I think he has said this, that he kind of subscribed to that new atheist mentality for a while, but while he was studying theology at Oxford or something like that, which I don't understand anybody who would study theology if you're would describe yourself as an atheist or an anti-theist, which is a more accurate term. And we're going to talk about the term atheism, though, and how Sam Harris uses it, and how he uses it does not make any sense. It doesn't, it's incoherent. And then, but what's interesting is Alex O'Connor has changed a lot. We've talked about this in other streams that I've given my commentary on, of his, and he's really seems to be moving towards theism. Whether he would describe it like that as or not is one thing, but I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. But listening to what he has said, I would say it seems like he's moving towards theism. That doesn't mean that he would have adopted all the infinite assumptions that people have about that, what that would mean. But if you start thinking that or sentience is fundamental, and then that can really only lead to one place, which is theism, which is intrinsically monotheistic. But we're going to talk about it tonight. Please hit the like button. Please comment how the sound is, and we will show the first clip. I'm just checking the sound. Okay. First clip.
Well, I think there are probably some people who look at that whole area of interest as being suspect, meditation and the contemplative life, and just the very notion that introspection can deliver anything of interest about the nature of the mind. I mean, there's a bias in science around that, although that I think has eroded a fair amount in recent decades. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I just noticed that I tend to shy away from the term spiritual or spirituality anyway, even though I tried to press it into service in that book. I also use contemplative, phenomenological, although no one really knows what that means when you use it. That the thing that one wants to indicate here is that there is a primacy of experience, right? The first person's perspective is really the only one we can ever fully adopt, even though we can intersubjectively talk about the third person.
That's correct.
And it admits of exploration directly. I mean, you can discover more of what it's like to be you by paying attention in certain ways, or by taking certain drugs, or having unusual experiences. going into the dark for a week. The people are doing dark retreats now, right? Which is kind of an extreme measure, but there are changes to be had to within this continuum of experience that reveal, if nothing about the cosmos at large, uh, they reveal a lot about the type of experience that one can have. Right, it's just the possibilities of experience. I mean, that really is indisputable. Whatever those experiences actually mean or should mean for our intellectual lives.
As I've been getting more interested in the philosophy of mind and consciousness, I've noticed quite a reticence amongst your materialist atheist type, even to sort of take the non-reductive, strictly scientific approach seriously. And I think there's a bit of an analogy here in that that kind of person might also just be unwilling to recognize the legitimacy of knowledge through self-reflection. That is, knowledge that you get sort of inwardly rather than externally through empiricism.
Mm.
And yet at the same time, I think you and I would agree that quite compellingly, there are just states of experience which are known very thoroughly through internal reflection and also unavoidably and informatively. So given that, what do you think accounts for the reticence of so many people to take reflective knowledge seriously?
Okay, so basically, the clip, I guess, had cut off a little bit about what Alex O'Connor had asked him before, but I hope it was able to be garnered, I guess. We're going to also look up the word reticence because I assume that I could have deduced what it kind of means, but I want to make sure. But I wanted to talk a bit about the term spirituality because, there is definitely undoubtedly a a large portion of people who would describe themselves as atheists but spiritual. I would say I would have said that at one point in my life. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, and that doesn't mean anything. Spiritual is very often has become kind of a term that has nothing to do with what it originally would have meant. And so we're going to look up the etymology. I don't want to say New Age because I don't like that term either, but there's a culture that I'm still looking to have a term for or a description of that is what most people would call the New Age culture, that is like spiritual but not religious. And I don't think that New Age is a good term. It's not a descriptive term. I'm looking to kind of deduce a descriptive term. I have not succeeded yet. If you think you have one, like, how would you describe it? I mean, if you're watching this live, put it in the live chat. Or if you're not watching this live, put it in the comments down below. I'm curious because I have failed to come up with this so far. And it's kind of like a focus on sentient experience, but that kind of elevates one's personal sentient experience, but denies a hierarchy of in the cosmos, essentially, and so in that way it's different from most religious traditions, or theological traditions more accurately, but is that there is no hierarchy to it. There is no right and wrong, really. It's not, and there isn't a hierarchy to present, which is why there's no right and wrong. And it's just a lot of chaos. But spirit, if somebody said your spirit, let's look it up. I don't really know. There's a lot of different ways in which you can, that I've heard it, used. Spirit can mean your temperament. He has a fighting spirit. Or spirit can mean your soul, which is like your you-ness, your someoneness. That's what your soul is. And it's more accurate probably to say, instead of saying you have a soul, it's like you are a soul. If you lose your soul, you lose yourself. You're not someone anymore. You're something alone. And you're like a robot. You're a hollowed out body. You've given up all agency, and that's when people say you sell your soul. You give up all of your agency, and agency really is like the only power that exists, especially within the context of theism, but even outside of that, our first person experience definitely supports that as well. It's the most fundamental power. People say, the four forces in physics, agency or will, freedom of will, is where we'll talk about Sam Harris's definition of that too. It is the only power. Freedom of will, free will is freedom of will. It is the ability to make choices about what your goals should be or what your goals are. To choose your goals, that is freedom of will. But that's it. It's not actually very complicated thing. Freedom of will, free will. Think about what it is. Will is your efforts, your desire to do something, and freedom of will is your ability to choose where to point that spirit that you have, that fighting spirit that is will. So Spirit Airlines comes up. I didn't have that bad of an experience on Spirit Airlines the one time that I took it. It was fine. But definition, spirit. The non-physical part of a person, which is the seat of emotions and character, the soul, exactly what I said. It could be basically the soul, used as a synonym for the soul. It is not a synonym, but it's used as a synonym. Those qualities regarded, second definition, those qualities regarded as forming the definitive or typical elements of the character of a person, like nation or group. So basically, like your temperament or your character. So kind of like a fighting spirit. He has a fighting spirit. To convey rapidly or secretly. Stolen cows were spirited away for some distance to prevent detection. Okay. Yeah. Isn't that it's like an anime movie, Spirited Away or something? I've never seen it. So, but now let's look up the etymology, because that's where you actually find the real definition of a term, of a word. The word spirit originates from the Latin spiritus, meaning breath or breathing or soul, which derives from spirare, I don't know how to pronounce it, meaning to breathe or to blow. It entered Middle English through Old French spirit and came to signify the vital animating principle of life force in humans and animals. So this is like, when God breathed the breath of life into man, he's giving some of his will. Breath is an interesting thing to kind of metaphor, or if you even want to say it's probably more than a metaphor, but it's at least also a metaphor. And breath is the mechanism or the carrier of one's voice, and and it is also the sustainer of one's life. You have to breathe to stay alive. You also communicate and express what is internal to you, to others, externally to others, via the container of your breath. Essentially, your voice is present in your breath. It's fascinating. These words they make a lot of sense to use the way that they've been used historically, and they're not just like empty kind of metaphors that are meant to sound spiritual. But regardless, any of these terms right here, that however you would define them, define spirit, these apply to all of us. You can't be more spiritual. I am a super logical person a lot of the time compared to most people. Also very emotional person. compared to most people, I think. But everyone is emotional, and I don't even know what that means. I'm very emotional compared to most people, um, or or even a very logical. I don't think that's even a good way to put it. I am very contemplative and aware. My wife and I talk about this. Is like other people, not everybody. Obviously, a lot of the people that we know are just like us because you associate with people who are similar to you. The people you talk to usually pretty similar to you, but a lot of people seem to be not as considering or contemplative or aware of things in their surroundings or consequences to their actions. And we all have blind spots. I'm not saying I'm aware and other people are not. What I just mean is I seem to notice more. And that might be just what is responsible for me saying like I'm more logical than most people, because I don't know if that's true. Or even more emotional. I don't think that's true either. I think that's kind of an incorrect way to put it. It's just like where is your logic being applied, and what is causing the emotions that you're feeling. And if you're more aware of a lot of things, like you're gonna have more feelings about a lot of things, and you're gonna have more thoughts like which are logical about a lot of things. I don't know. It's interesting, but I kind of forgot where I was going with that. But spirit is you can't be spiritual and other people not be spiritual. You have a spirit, if you're going to define it as a soul, and that's like that doesn't go away just because you don't I don't know, learn about the chakras, or you don't go to church. These things, you are someone with emotions someone that feels, because all someones feel. That is what is the defining nature of someone. And there's no one that is more spiritual than another. It just doesn't really make sense. It's a term that we've used to describe, like I said, I don't know, people who I can't define it. Let's look to the chat, because I see people commenting. Maybe you guys have a better way of describing it than me. I will always say will and meaning are the same, because your will contains all the things you mean. See, but here's the thing. I don't think that's actually the correct way to use the term meaning. Meaning has kind of two definitions that people use often. Meaning is like, what's the meaning of life? Which is like, what's the purpose of it? And then meaning is also used to mean, which is how I just used it. The information conveyed, I guess, by like, let's look up a meaning synonym, even though there is no synonyms. I'm just looking it up. So meaning, definition, sense, explanation, denotation, connotation, interpretation, elucidation, explication. Okay, so meaning, let's look up the etymology. Let's see if I'm right about what's the original. The meaning. What's the meaning of meaning? It's funny that's what we're looking at basically. Meaning, or meninge, sense that which is intended to be expressed. Also, act of remembering, a sense now obsolete. A verbal noun from mean, the sense of significance and importance. Is attested from 1960s. Okay, but that's the definition. I want the etymology. The root word of meaning is mean, from Old English meanan, meaning to intend, signify, or indicate. Stems from... Huh. Maybe I was wrong. So then what is a better term for meaning? Purpose, intention is like, but it's interesting because like God's intention is our meaning. So it's very weird, this term meaning, because it's almost like circular, which means you're getting very close to fundamental with it. Huh. This is tough. To think. It's very weird. It's hard. I've never had such a tough time finding like the etymology that is kind of clear about what something means, other than meaning, which makes sense. Like where you can't even use the term, not use the term when you say it, unless you were like, what something is explicative of. It's I'm looking at the synonyms here, trying to like replace them, meaning or mean, with them. What something connotates, what something denotates, what something explicates, what something defines, what something interprets. I don't know if any of those are actually the best. So maybe it is the best term for it is like what you are saying, is that things, will and meaning are the same because your will contains all the things that you mean. I gotta think about this. It's tough. We need a term for like meaning, like purpose, like what's the meaning of life, what's another word for that? Commented in the chat or down in the comments below, because I'm stuck a little bit. I can't think of good words that are very good, or better stand-ins for mean. And I guess meaning and mean might be different. It might be that, because the meaning of a word, or I guess if you're saying like, what's the meaning of, this is tough. This is really tough, but this is interesting because there's no other word that I've had such a hard time with. And because we need a term to kind of convey what meaning of, like, in the sentient sense, and it's interesting because like they say God spoke the world into existence, essentially, and God said, "Let there be light," and he breathed life into man, and it's kind of there's a not so much of a line between meaning like the meaning of life, and meaning or purpose, versus compared to or versus the meaning of a word, or what I mean by that, if you're God, especially. And that's very interesting. There's definitely, this is definitely something I'm going to need to think a lot about, because there's definitely an answer to this, and it's probably super simple, but it's so simple that it's like not, it's being overlooked by us right now. It's probably something like meaning is a different term versus to mean. To mean versus to meaning. Mean. To mean is a verb indicating intention, significance, definition, etc. While meaning is a noun referring to the definition or significance itself. What is the meaning? Mean focuses on the act of intending, whereas meaning describes the content or purpose. That's exactly what I said. So we got it. It's just these are two different words, but we think of them as one. And there is some relevance between them, especially in the context of God, because what God means is also our purpose. You know, what God means and what he speaks into existence is also what our purpose is to life, you know, essentially to our existence or to his creation, you know. What does the sentence mean? Fascinating. And then there's means, which is like ability, you know. So it's meaning, and means versus means. Let's look this up. Someone's means. Mean refers to intention or significance or definition, while means is a third person singular form or noun for a method. Meaning refers to the definition or significance of something. So it's significance, or you could say definition, sure, but like the meaning of a word. But when you say what's the meaning of a word, this is actually fascinating. So meaning, when you say what's the meaning of a word, what you're really asking is what is the intention of somebody using that word, which is like what you said. It is the same because your will contains all the things you mean. It's very similar to what you said. We're back. That's fascinating. It's like you can't actually have this separate definition of the term mean or meaning without the inclusion of the context of someone's intentions, which is kind of unique, actually, when it comes to etymology. When you look at etymology, it's pretty clear that like a term was built on these two terms, and so the combination of these two terms equals this term. It's just basically a math equation. This is like different. This is not a math equation. It's like we've hit bottom a little bit with the term mean or meaning or means. Fascinating. Like if you think about mean is intention, meaning is meaning would be purpose, essentially, and then means would be abilities, essentially. And then you combine all three of these and you get someone. That's which it seems like, you know, that's fascinating. I've known that this was tough for a while, but kind of just assumed that there was a better term for what a word means, but like definition. When you say, how are you defining a term? But that's the same thing as it's similar to asking what do you mean by God, you know, or whatever, Jordan Peterson type of question. But it does matter to ask those things. To mean, what do you mean? You wouldn't say like, what does it mean? You would say, what do you mean? Where you could say a word, what is its definition, which is going to come from its etymology. But then you don't say, what does it mean? You would say, what do you mean by that? Fascinating. That sounds about right. Interesting. Which makes it different from definition, because it's like your personal definition. It's the first person definition. It's like, what do you mean by that word? Oh man. All right. Well, that was cool. Also, if someone has a lot of will, people say they are spirited. Yes, exactly. Like you're very fighting spirit or something, which is will. Will is, it's a constant fighting spirit. That's what will is. It's a constant desire to do. If you lose your desire to do, you lose your will. I used to say it's the desire to do that which is not being done. But you could also, people might say it's the desire. Sometimes it could be the desire to continue doing that which you are doing. But even that, if you really break down what's happening there, it's still the desire to do that which is not. Maybe it's not the desire to do that which is not being done, but it is the desire to do that which is not. To keep doing is still the desire to do that which is not. So it's a generative desire. Will is actually a simple thing to define. Much simpler than mean or meaning or means. I guess means is probably easy and mean is easy, but meaning and mean is, and if you think about them all, then it gets complicated. All meaning is established by will originally. Yes, that's true. But someone's will, yes. Who decides what things mean? It's always someone. Yes, exactly. Good, nice. And definitions form when people of a common language agree. Yeah, that's what I was saying. What do you mean? That's when we can come to a shared understanding of how something is being defined. And means is interesting too. I'd say will is the only real means anyone has. Exactly. That's what I said at the beginning of this stream. Is agency is the only real power. Agency is just the ability to exercise freedom of your will. And for someone to exercise freedom of their will, essentially. That's what agency is. We're on the same page here, R-Web. All right. Means is interesting too. Then there's mean as an average too. Yeah, exactly. I thought about that too, but I don't want to go too into the weeds. But I'm sure we'll come back to it. But I'm sure it's relevant. Why is it called the mean? Mean in now I'm Googling it. Mathematics is the average of a set of numerical data. Why is mean versus average? Let's look that up. Versus average. In mathematics, mean and average are often used interchangeably to refer to the sum of a set of numbers divided by the count of those numbers. Average is a general term for central tendency, while mean is a specific parameter or type of average. Average, a general term for a measure of central tendency, covering mean, median, and mode. Mean is a specific arithmetic calculation. So average includes mean, median, and mode. The mode is the value that appears most frequently. The mean is, everything added, summed, and then divided by the count of the set. And then median is, I guess, it would be the central point in a spread of numbers. How do they define median in math? Is the middle value. in an ordered data set. Yeah, basically that's exactly what I said. Representing the center point. Oh, wow, they even say center point. That's funny. Yeah, it is. Okay. So average represents, kind of encapsulates all of those things. I didn't know that. I always thought average and mean were like the same. But that makes sense. You know, when you look at a data set, it's like, what on average how much do you make on average day or something? And people, like, when they think about that, they're kind of thinking overall, you know, split up, and also they're thinking about the center point in how much they've made a maximum versus how little they've made, and they're also thinking about on most days how much, what is the most common amount that I make on per day. So it's like that is average. Interesting. I didn't know that. I thought it was just only meant the mean. One of my coworkers told me, what's up, Torin? One of my coworkers told me the other day that he had just begun reading 12 Rules, and I immediately busted out my Jordan Peterson impression. It's been years. Interesting. He comes up again today. Yeah. Clean your room, bucko. Yeah, you should. I clean up in here every single time day before my stream. I clean up my desk around me, and I clean up like the area around me. And not that it's a mess, but I just make sure everything's ordered, and it's in a place for a purpose, because I'm getting on here and I'm about to think out loud for usually hours on end about pretty abstract or complex. I don't even want to say complex, but pretty deep ideas. I don't know what, but and it's just or at least let's say super relevant ideas, like things that are relevant to everything, which means like your mind is making all these connections all the time. That's why I go on so many tangents, because we're talking about things that are fundamentally fundamental, which would mean that they're fundamentally relevant, which means they are almost universally relevant. And so it's very easy to just go, you know, lose your words, but go in a bunch of different directions and get distracted and confused, even because you could talk. It's just so applicative to so many different. You could just go down so many different paths. It's good to just keep your mind as ordered as possible. Okay, so next clip. But when somebody says I'm spiritual, it doesn't mean anything, or at least it can't really mean it. What the etymology of it would mean. It's like it definitely they mean something, but it doesn't mean something. That's we're learning how to use this term properly. When somebody says I'm spiritual, that doesn't intrinsically mean anything. It doesn't. It's actually like an incoherent statement, I think. But that's a better way to put it. It's an incoherent statement. But they definitely do mean something, and I'm trying to deduce describe what that is, other than to say like New Age. But it's definitely a focus on I guess it would be like somebody who is internally focused, and that's what I would say. It's somebody who, when they say I'm very spiritual, means like I try to be very internally focused. Maybe it means something like that. Doesn't even mean I am very internally focused. It means I'm trying to be very internally focused, because many of them are not probably as internally focused as they think. Okay, but Sam Harris is right. First-person experience is primary, and it's the only one we can fully adopt, which is why we talk about prioritizing it every stream, which is why I showed my own personal UFO experiences last stream, and we talked about, you know, making sense of that topic, which is good luck. But you can make some sense of things, but you have to start with first-person experience. It's interesting. Somebody was talking about just talking about it doesn't matter. I'm going to go on another tangent about like debates about aliens and whether or not there's life on cellular life beyond Earth, and it's not relevant to the stream right now. I did a whole stream about it last week. You can watch it. But somebody brought it up this week with me, and it's just interesting to see what information they were prioritizing when they were coming to the conclusions that they were coming to. Okay, so here.
As I've been getting more interested in the philosophy of mind and consciousness, I've noticed quite a reticence amongst your materialist atheist type, even to sort of take the non-reductive, strictly scientific approach seriously. And I think there's a bit of an analogy here in that that kind of person might also just be unwilling to recognize the legitimacy of knowledge through self-reflection. That is, knowledge that you get sort of inwardly rather than externally through empiricism. And yet at the same time, I think you and I would agree that quite compellingly, there are just states of experience which are known very thoroughly through internal reflection and also unavoidably and informatively. So given that, what do you think accounts for the reticence of so many people to take reflective knowledge seriously?
Before we listen to his answer, we're going to look up the term reticence. Reticence. Never heard that term before this stream. So, or before listening to that their talk. The quality of being reticent or reserved. That's not enough. Not revealing of one's thoughts. Reticence. It's a noun form of reticent, meaning a reserved, shy, or uncommunicative nature, often involving a deliberate choice to remain silent or share minimal information. So, if you are reticent, okay, so let's look up the etymology too. Wait, that's not etymology. Originates from the Latin reticentia, silent or keeping silent, derived from reticere, to keep silent, a recombination of re, meaning an intensive prefix, or back, or tacere, to be silent. Reticent, to hold back. Yeah, being reluctant to speak freely. So, and this, what's interesting is, so Kirchheim Mungol posted this video of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And Neil deGrasse Tyson is like, he's asked, what do you believe? And he's like, I don't believe anything. I look at the evidence and then I, deduce the truth, basically. And that's just such an obviously false statement. Everybody has beliefs, and he has this false definition of belief, which is that he thinks that belief, in the way that it's being used when, your beliefs, is that they are kind of unfounded. Like when people say faith, I have faith in God, and people will be like, you really, like, that's ridiculous. You just, to believe what they think it means to believe without evidence, or that my beliefs are things that I think without consideration, basically. And nobody does that. Really, like people that say my beliefs and then, but they have not really been very, I guess, reflective on them, or they would never say that. Later on in life, they might say, yeah, I wasn't very reflective on them. Like there was a point in my life when I remember I was like, realizing that my political beliefs, particularly, quote unquote, were not. They didn't come from me, you know. Like I had, or they didn't seem to. They came. I had adopted them because my parents had them. But the thing is that they weren't actually my beliefs. I can't say those are my beliefs. In reality, I did say that, but I was incorrect whenever I said that. Until you actually think about something, you don't really, you can't really have like actual beliefs about it. You can parrot other people's beliefs, and maybe that is your belief, but it's not really your real belief. It's like you don't have an opinion, and you know, you're in a social context that's just making it convenient for you or beneficial to just like say it, that you do. But and it's just interesting because the way that Neil deGrasse Tyson, what he believes about the term belief is just an incoherent definition. True beliefs are backed by experience. But to be reticent of when he's saying people are in that clip, people are reticent to take reflective knowledge seriously. What he's saying is people are not in the scientific world are they're reticent. They are silent, or they're hold back expressing their personal experience, the relevance of their personal experience in any subject that's being discussed. And you can tell this when people say things like, maybe consciousness is an illusion. Maybe there is no someone. And I think even Sam Harris's wife says this, is that there is no someone. She'll be like, consciousness is fundamental, but there is no someone. And I think it was Alex O'Connor, and I did a commentary on it a long time ago, probably a year ago, his talk with her. And it's pretty similar to like what Sam Harris seems to state. And it also seems totally incoherent. And I don't understand what why that is, like how you do that. Why would you do that? Just deny the existence of yourself, basically, even though it's the truest thing that you know. When you say, what is the first question? The answer is, what is the first question? So you say, what is the second question? Whenever you're building anything, context to anything, this is actually the second question, is what is the truest thing that I know? And the answer is I am. That is the answer. And so but yet this perspective that Sam Harris's wife takes is denying of that. And so is you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's saying, I don't have beliefs. That's a belief. Or it's a response. It's like a trained response, which I don't know how much that is a belief. It's not a true belief. I don't think. It's just like, I am a scientist. I must be detached. And there is no me in the equation. It's just math. But Deepak Chopra called him out perfectly. He's like, do you believe that? Do you really believe that? And it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. He made some statement. It doesn't matter what it is. And then Deepak Chopra just responded with, let's just say it was like, I don't have beliefs. I measure the evidence and stuff. I think it was that. And then Deepak Chopra goes, do you really believe that? And he's like, yes. He's like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. It's like when you've seen my video about creation and that got Sean Carroll to block me, when he's like, if you do believe that God is a necessary being in the creation of a universe, all I need to do to prove you wrong is to create a universe in which God does not exist. And I showed how basically he is playing God in that equation. And it's like you just highlight the incoherence of their statement. You don't have to prove anything. It's like, so all that you need to do in order to show that a conscious creator is not necessary to the existence of a universe is consciously create a universe. That's what was my response. It's right there. It's like, then you realize the incoherence of their argument. And that Deepak Chopra's statement to Neil deGrasse Tyson is honestly even simpler and funnier, when he's like, I don't have beliefs. I weigh the evidence and I come to a conclusion. Do you really believe that? Yes. Okay. Then you have beliefs. It's just but it's the erasing of the self. That's what it is. And because sometimes, for some reason, we have this like dogma of the inclusion of the self is not scientific. It's like firsthand experience is not scientific. Only we need objective, testable, provable, falsifiable information, and that's it in science. And you can't have science without if that's all that you have, because fundamentally the purpose of a scientific method or the endeavor of science is understanding, and that's always personal. And so and you have to prioritize firsthand information above secondhand information. So it's just the erasure of self, and it's become this social thing where you don't want to seem like you're the person who isn't academic. You're like an amateur if you're going to use your personal experiences as evidence of a stance. So people are reticent to bring their personal experiences in. But let's see what Sam Harris has to say.
Well, I mean, there's a range of capacity in this regard, talent in this regard, which I do think explains a fair amount. I mean, some people are just not musical, to use an analogy, in this way, right? They just, it's a very direct analogy to be made to somebody who's just not musical, right? I mean, we might have talked about this last time. I don't have any real discernible musical talent. My wife assures me that I'm tone deaf, even though an occasional rendition of Happy Birthday at least gets attempted to prove her wrong. But so what is it like to not be musical, right? And to really to be sort of closed by sheer, just the contingent fact of your own lack of talent to just how deep that domain goes, right? And spirituality, for lack of a better word, has a similar kind of property to it, which is there are experiences that are readily available to those who want to pay attention in the necessary ways. But for those without the talent, it can be very slow going. It can be very difficult to, you're given the instruction, well, let's say to just pay attention to close your eyes and pay attention to your breathing. And every time you get lost in thought, just come back to the breathing. Right now, I mean, here's how the bell curve of aptitude might express itself along the lines of that instruction. If you're super talented, right? If you have an aptitude for being concentrated and kind of breaking the spell of identification with discursive thought readily, the moment you're given that instruction, you might kind of plunge into a drug-like experience where you find yourself in the well of pure being very, very quickly, right? So the sense of having a body can disappear, thoughts can cease. There can just be this experience of kind of pure consciousness without apparent boundary. If you're really lucky, you can totally lose your sense of self, like the sense of subject-object splitting of experience, where there appears in the usual case to always be an observer of experience, in addition to
The self is always the boundary of consciousness or of experience or of awareness. The idea that it's boundless is it's just not physically. There's no. You lose focus on or attention or perspective of the physical, because you're not focused on the physical. And so here's what I'll say about this. I actually don't know how much I think that it's what he's saying is really the most relevant thing. I'm not going to say he's wrong, but as somebody who doesn't really isn't the most musically talented person, I guess you could say, I have wondered like why, other than the fact that I just haven't put in the effort, which part of it is just practice, like everything. And you can, but but there is certainly like a perspective that seems to be present in people who that makes them practice even, and also like how they experience themselves when they are practicing or playing music. And I thought about it, and it's funny because when he says tone deaf, when people say you're tone deaf, that's why you can't sing. And what they're really saying is, and this is like this is my hypothesis as to like what makes somebody able to be able to be a decent singer and not really able to be a decent singer. And is how you hear your own voice similar to how other people hear your voice. And that's probably that's probably like constrained by your physiology, you know? And it's interesting because over time my voice seems much I mean, I re-listen to myself on these streams when I'm like adding timestamps or something, looking for clips, which by the way, if you ever think that there's a good part that should be a standalone clip, comment the timestamp down below in the comment section, please. It really would help. It's tough to pick out clips if you're the person who did the entire stream. You don't know what other people find relevant. But the point is you're not going to be a good singer if you're most likely is if your voice sounds different externally than it does internally to you. And my voice, over time, I remember listening to my voice on recording many years ago and always being kind of, I guess, surprised that I didn't sound the way on recording the way that I do to myself when I'm speaking. And that has gone away slowly over time. I wonder if it's just because I've become so used to this, like hearing my own voice, or if it's just my physiology has changed as I've grown. Probably both. But the same thing happens. There's a similar thing that happens with music. And I do try and get like a little bit of, ukulele. Like I can do a little bit, but I'm not that good actually. And I barely ever practice now, but I was practicing for a while and I was getting better because practice makes you better. But my motives for playing any instrument, and this is why I don't do it consistently, is because is for the sake of others. Like I would like to, I think it would be cool to be the person that can play piano. Not that it's not that I have a personal desire to sit and just play piano and listen to myself play for hours and hours and hours. I do have that with thinking and speaking. That's why I can do it. And I do it here. And I'm quite good at it actually. But I usually maybe I think I am usually good at it. But I don't have that desire with music. And so I'm not going to be practicing as much because it's not for me. It's not self-motivated and as much. And also when I'm thinking about myself playing music, I'm not thinking about sitting down and trying to play the music. I'm sitting there thinking about what do I look like to others when I'm playing this music? Do I look cool? Or do I, look terrible? And that's not what you should be paying attention to when you're actually going to be good at music. So perspective matters immensely in whether or not, and motives matter immensely in how they constrain your abilities. And this is true of spirituality too. I'm very focused on like morality, and I'm very interested in it. Not that I don't like calling people out for being immoral. Like I try and avoid that, but I'm very interested in what is right and wrong, not who's right and wrong, or who's good and bad, but what is right and wrong. And it's very self-motivated. And but there's a lot of people out there that would say I'm very focused on morality, but their focus is like on appearing like they're doing the right thing, and also or like being the good person, quote unquote, or they're very focused on calling out or even just identifying who is a bad person. And that is like kind of, it's externally focused, regardless, because your focus is on others, no matter what. You might be, even if you're focused on looking like a good person to others, your focus is on their focus. It's not internal. And so that is somebody who like can't hear the music of when it comes to morals, even if they love it. You know, it's like the person that goes on, I don't know, America's Got Talent, and they only let them on the stage because they know they're that bad and like they need it for entertainment purposes. But actually somebody who genuinely thinks that they're good at singing. But there are people like that with morality, and that's basically, like, I would say, is a big component of spirituality. If maybe spirituality is like the average. Within it, there's the mean, the median, and the mode. So within spirituality, there's morality, and there is, these, I guess there would be two others, components that would be within that umbrella. And I don't know exactly what they would be right now, but one of them would be morality. Maybe another one would be like self-control, or agency. It'd be like morality, agency. How good are you at just like, how disciplined can you be with your goals and your intentions? And then, I don't know, maybe the other one is just self-reflective or something. I don't know. I got to think about it. But like, people who are good at piano, people who are good at ukulele, like they love to hear themselves play. I love hearing myself think and speak. Like, people say that as an insult. You love hearing the sound of your own voice, like, but I do. And it's not out of like a weird narcissism or anything like that. It's, I'm entertained by the practice of thinking. And I do that very verbally, like, on these streams, and I like hearing it. It's the same thing as like when I bet you people who like to play music, they love to hear themselves play. They probably also like to watch a recording of themselves playing music. When I do martial arts, like I like watching recordings of myself, practicing, because I have a genuine interest in it. It's not for anybody else to see. It's like for me. It's just another perspective on something of you doing something that you are passionate about. And it's just, your perspective is very limiting, but it's also very enabling. Yeah, there's also personal talent. But that in terms of talent, I just mean like, what is that really? It encompasses a lot, but it's not, it's the part of your abilities that you don't choose, that you inherit, whether that's physiology that allows you to hear your own voice the way similar to how other people would hear you, so that you can make sure that you're singing in a way that your pitch is how other people should be to others, I guess. You're hearing your pitch accurately. You're not tone deaf, or it is the environment that you are born into, and all of that feeds into, I would say, talent. Do you have the right fingers to play piano very well, or ukulele? But if I ever got like, if I ever had a change in perspective and really liked to hear myself play ukulele, I bet you I would get way better at it, because I would do it more often, and also like your focus is proper. If you're focused on morality, like you shouldn't be focused on who's good and bad, or do you look good to others. It's like your focus is on what is right and wrong. It's on the actual it's correct. It's you're properly aligned. I don't know. But spiritual is the same thing. When people say I'm spiritual, I'm very spiritual, and like again in like the New Age community, for lack of a better term, it's very, very, very dominated by a large portion of like looking like people trying to look like they are good, which is interesting because, and it's partially because like you can't try and figure out what is right and wrong if you don't have a hierarchy to start from. And if you don't want to look judgmental, then you can't admit things that there's a right and wrong. Otherwise you'll look judgmental, but it's not about looking judgmental. It's about actually being discerning. But you can not be judgmental and also admit what is right and wrong. But it's about recognizing that is right or good, and that is wrong or bad. Not that person is right, is good or bad. It's that thing, that action. Really, that action is, or that intention even, is good or bad. But you can never know somebody's intentions. You can only know your intentions. So you shouldn't ever judge anyone's intentions, because even if they tell you what their intentions are, you can't know if it's true. So you can't judge it actually. Like, you can judge actions. You must judge actions. It's a part of being spiritual, quote unquote. It is part of spirituality, not being spiritual. That is the wrong way to use the term. That is also part of like what is the problem is like the idea that you can be spiritual and not be spiritual, or that person is spiritual or that person is not spiritual. It's that spirituality is something that is kind of constant, if it's anything, for everyone. But if it's proper, then it's focused on the self, like on understanding oneself, controlling oneself, improving oneself, and seeing oneself. Really, that would be like spirituality, if it's anything. So I think that there's that Sam Harris is wrong though about or not wrong, but that the bigger portion of why people are so reticent to bring first person experience and what is known by everyone internally but isn't able to be proven to anyone externally into the discussions of science is just because of a lack of practice in thinking, a misunderstanding of what it means to think, kind of an idol worship of conceptions of what is science that we have inherited or from school. It's not just people aren't good at it, or not the people aren't talented at it. It's more than that. Okay, next clip. Actually, let's go to the chat. Clean your room, bust out Tyler impression. What are the odds? Exactly. Oh, probably 100%. That's the odds. Where is Sam at? Sam is going to be being shown in clips. People come to a conclusion or belief usually. It would be the odd fellow that settles on I don't know. It's when people settle on I don't know, what they're really saying is I don't care. Like that's what it is. And you do have a belief, I guess, even when you don't care much, but it's not a true belief. You can. In this, we're going to get into atheism and how Sam describes it, and theism in a minute, because that's very relevant. It's all. I mean, it is the basis of why this is a problem. As I also think is that there is this avoidance of, if you place sentience as primary, as the primary nature of existence, you will get to theism. There is no way to maintain coherence without it. You will end up saying things like Sam Harris and Sam Harris's wife, where they're like, there's nothing but consciousness, but there is no someone. And that is insane. I'm not saying they're insane. I'm saying that's insane. My wife gets mad at me when I use the word retarded. And I try and use it for like, that is retarded, instead of like someone is, or like insane with insane. It's like, that is insane. But it's really like, because they used to be probably more technical terms. And I don't mean medical terms. I mean like technical terms. Those are different things. But really incoherent is probably like the best term for what most people, when someone is acting in an insane way, they are acting on thoughts that are incoherent. They're following thoughts that are incoherent. So I should say that it is incoherent. Sam and his wife's beliefs on that. Beliefs have a lot of power because they will precede the will. They can. They can. There's a lot that I want to unpack there. I need to think about it, and I don't want to get on another tangent right now, but maybe we'll come back to it. There are reasons the will bases decision. They are the reasons the will bases decisions on. Yes, that's true. I think it's hard to hear exactly how low my voice is since it's right next to my ears. Also, my voice has become more expressive and melodic over the years compared to when I was young. Yeah, mine too has changed. Once I was sitting on a bench I was sitting at a table eating lunch at my when I first moved to Los Angeles, and I was at my first job out of college, and I was with my coworkers and we were all eating lunch. And this guy walked up to me out of nowhere, and he was like, "Sorry to interrupt, but here's my card. I work in radio, and you have like a radio voice, and you should call me," or whatever. And I never called him. I don't know where the card is, but it's interesting because at the time I had no desire to speak in front of anyone, and now I do it all the time for hours and hours and hours on end, and it's like one of my favorite things to do. So it's odd. He heard it before I did. Okay. I think there's okay. I sounded kind of flat and uniform when I was young. I don't think I've ever asked you, but do you keep any spiders? No, but we had a spider outside my house that is a garden spider named Charlotte, and that my daughter and I would like feed. We'd catch like flies and stuff and throw them into the web, and we would go and say hi to Charlotte all the time. This is actually Charlotte. Here's a video of Charlotte eating a monarch butterfly that flew into the web. Watch this spider wrap this monarch butterfly up. It's funny because actually, Torin, I don't know if you ever saw this, but like my wife and I were watching this monarch butterfly, total side tangent, but like on a flower in our yard, and we were like, "Oh, it's so beautiful." And then my wife's like, do butterflies have any predators? And I was like, "Yeah, like birds." She's like, "Birds?" And then the butterfly gets up, flies into Charlotte's web, and then Charlotte attacks it, and I caught the whole thing on camera. Here. You can hear my wife here. Just listen.
Are there prey? I mean, are there predators for butterflies?
Yep, birds.
Birds?
Birds. Or, oh my gosh! Speaking of predators, flew right into Charlotte. Charlotte killed the butterfly. Oh no, Charlotte. It's like planet Earth. That spider is huge, by the way. It's like the size of my palm. Yep, there's another one. But Charlotte is killing the... It's crazy. But here, watch this. Watch her wrap this up. Sped up a little, but not much. It was moving so fast that you couldn't see it. Crazy. Charlotte the spider. That was my pet. And then my dog ran into the web, and I thought he killed it, but it might have already been dead because they die whenever it gets cold. And I didn't know that, but I was so pissed at my dog about it because my wife was like, "You really got attached to that spider." I was like, "Yeah." Every day we'd walk out and feed it mosquitoes and flies and things, and but no, I don't keep any spiders. Here. Next clip. By the way, Torin, you said my shirt reminds you of a sapphire tarantula, which is very cool. But look up a T. Celedonia tarantula, a jewel tarantula. We'll just show this because I don't want to be like, now I feel like it's like an inside conversation. I've got to show you guys. This is the most beautiful tarantula in the world. This is very small, tiny little tarantula that makes a trapdoor. Look at that. That's crazy looking. It's beautiful. Even if you don't like spiders, that is just awesome. And that's as big as they get. Tiny. That's pretty awesome. Like a super small tarantula. That nuts. That's God right there. Like that's gorgeous. Even if you don't like spiders, that is beautiful. There are some animals out there, some flowers that just you can just tell God had fun with. He was like, that I'm just gonna have fun with this one, and it ends up looking like what a little kid would draw as an animal. It's like rainbow colored or something. It doesn't even seem to make sense with the environment. There's nothing that would seem to select for it other than God's will to just make something ridiculous. That's one of those things. But here,
As I've been getting more interested.
Next clip.
And also unavoidably and informatively.
Okay, here we go.
Well, people are going to hear you say that some people think that the only thing the mind does is think. And I'll say, well, of course. I mean, that's what the mind does. It's the thinking machine, right? In the same way that the heart pumps blood. The only way that the heart could not be pumping blood is if it were stopped, as if it were dead. So, yeah, I mean, your mind can not think, but that only happens when you're in dreamless sleep or when you're dead. That's what people will think, but it seems like you're suggesting that the mind can do something and maybe does do something more fundamentally than thinking, which is the thing that it's most associated with.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting here that the goal of meditation or the most fundamental spiritual insight is to be without thought, because that's actually not the case. But it is true to say that when you become very, very concentrated, it is just phenomenologically the case that thoughts can cease to arise. I mean, it's almost synonymous with deep states of concentration meditatively. And that is intrinsically pleasurable and drug-like and quite astonishing for people. So that's why I was kind of describing that experience first. The ultimate goal is to recognize thought. It's not to block thoughts or to have them cease to arise. Um, and I'm not at all discounting the utility of thought for virtually everything we care about, and complex thought, an ability to model the past and the future, an ability to trade in these representations linguistically with one another and to build culture on that basis. I mean, this really is what makes us human. So none of us should want a mind that is incapable of producing thoughts, and I think it's right to want a mind that is capable of producing better thoughts than we tend to produce. Right. So by all means, let's improve our thinking. Uh, However, there's much more to the mind than that. Right? There's much more to your own being in the world than that. And when you look at the experiences that you will tend to find truly rewarding, truly deep or peak or remarkable, one of their characters is a kind of suspension of the normal uh, consequences of being identified with thought. Right? We tend to be abstracting away from moment to moment lived experience in our internal conversation about it. Right? We're constantly narrating our lives to ourselves as though we were not ourselves already. Right? As though there was two of us in dialogue, the I and the me somehow. And so you'll have an experience and you'll talk about it to yourself as a way of giving it shape or as a way of, recoiling from it or hoping to change it. Or, you'll, you'll lose something and you'll be looking for it and you will literally think, where did I put that? Or is that it? Or, yeah, it's like you're talking to mommy, who's still in the room with you, though she hasn't.
Okay, this is something I agree with Sam Harris on. Yeah, but I think so. But here's the problem: when we look at how the word mind was used by Alex, it was actually, I would say, incorrect. To say the mind thinks, and just like the heart pumps blood, that's not true. The mind is kind of like the average that we talked about earlier, which includes the mean, the median, and the mode. The mind is inclusive of thinking, of feeling, of will, of all these of these different components of someone. And so you don't have a mind. You are a brain. Sorry, you don't have a mind. You are a mind. You have a brain, but you are not your brain. And but you are a mind. And so it's different. Just like you have a heart, you have a brain, but you are a mind. Okay? And a mind is the structure that sentience inhabits, and the structure that has the nature of sentience. So when we talk about sentient singularity theory, and we go to sentientsingularity.com, and we go to writings, and you look here at technical description of existence, and you're like, Sentient singularity theory describes the fundamental building blocks of the cosmos to be sentient beings, and that sentience is the defining nature and animating feature of the most, I guess, will, you could say willful, will is like the animating feature, but sentience is part of it. Sentience is the defining nature of existence, and its structure is mind. You could say its structure is oneness. As well. So structure has property of intrinsic and indivisible oneness. Its structure is singularness, which is someoneness, and singular is someone. And so sentience is feeling. It's not thinking, it's feeling. And but sentience is the nature of existence, and oneness or singularity is the nature of or is the structure of existence, essentially. But you could say, or it's like the shape of it, I guess. but within that, like its internal structure. This is actually the correct way to put it. Is I don't even know if that's the way that I just thought of it is actually the right way to put it. But the experience of it is that of oneness, but the process of it, the process of existence, you could say, or of someone, is mind. Like you are a mind. It is the structure slash mind is like a structure slash process in which sentience is that of which sentience is the nature of, I guess, and oneness is like the boundary of it. It's kind of hard to say whether or not it's the right thing to say its structure is oneness or its structure is mind. Mind is the structure, but it's the structure. Like it's a little tough. Yeah, I mean, they're both kind of true. It just depends on how you're using the term structure, I guess. But you need to describe both the nature and structure of existence too. To say what it is, to say what you are, and there's an intrinsic assumption of of singularness or of oneness or singularity that is built into being someone, but the structure of your being is mind. So you are a mind. You have a brain. You have a heart. You are a mind. And the mind is not intrinsically thinking. It's capable of thinking. But what a mind intrinsically does actually is feel. And so but it's hard because we have also cultures where they'll say like you need the mind and the heart, a balance between the mind and the heart. And I don't agree with that. I think that you can't stop feeling. You are feeling. It is what sentient beings do, is feel. What sentient beings can do is think. And so a mind, if a being is a mind, it's like the structure of being is mind. It can think. It is a structure that allows for thinking, but it is not a structure that intrinsically is defined by thinking, actually. Because experiencing is feeling. And so when Sam Harris is talking about just like detaching yourself from your thoughts, kind of trying to not think anymore, just be very present, what you're trying to do, they'll be like, no thoughts. You want no thoughts. And that's very hard to, you can't tell somebody that and actually have them do it. They'll be like, clear your mind. Well, now I'm just thinking about clearing my mind, which makes my mind not clear. You can't clear your mind. You can stop thinking, but you do that by just feeling. By just feeling, particularly about the present. Not about the future, not about the past, but of the present. And for years, I had such a hard time with people being like, it's no thought. The key is no thought. The goal is no thought. Don't think. Stop thinking. Clear your mind. I'm like, dude, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Because you're not telling somebody what to do. You're telling them what not to do. It's like, okay, telling me what not to do, but intrinsically, it's causing me to do which you are telling me not to do. It's not working. And also, what am I supposed to do even if I could not do that? What am I supposed to do? And people are like, just be. And what that means is to just feel the present. And I'm trying to be better about this, like particularly around my daughter, is like, because I'm just somebody, like I said earlier, I just have a lot of thoughts all the time. I'm just thinking about a lot. And I've noticed she's getting to the age where I can tell that she can tell that I'm not being present when I'm around her sometimes. She'll try and get my attention. She'll be like, get in front of my face. She'll be like, and then I feel bad. I'm like, okay, I need to be present. And that means not thinking about the fact that I was distracted and how I feel bad about it or whatever. It's like, I just need to think about this. I just need to observe this moment, not think about this moment, but observe this moment that I'm in. I was watching earlier tonight before I got on the stream. I was watching Beauty and the Beast with her. We finished it tonight, and it's the first time she's ever seen it. It's the first time I've seen it in like 25 years or more, probably 30 years. But I was the other day. I was like, I couldn't. I was just thinking about my work, and I was thinking about my theory, and I was thinking about my stream, and I was thinking about other like hobbies that I have and just like goals that I have. And I just was kind of feeling overwhelmed. And I could tell she was just like trying to get my attention. And I was like, no, I'm here sitting, watching a movie with my daughter and my wife. And I just need to observe and feel this moment because it's going to be gone. And you can't re-feel like the moment again. Like you can think about the moment again, and then you will feel a certain way about that thought, but that's going to be now contextualized, not in the moment. It's going to be contextualized in whatever prompted you to remember the moment. And that's a different context. So I'm trying to be better about it, but you don't have to just practice meditation to do this. Just practice being present. Like that's the best way to put it. I think that's, if you want to get good at not identifying with your thoughts, which means like not letting them, like basically having control over them, having control over your thoughts, while maintaining you, and yourself is just basically, you do that by practicing being present, just observing and feeling the present moment, not thinking about what comes next or whatever, like, or why you're in it. Just like feel what you feel and look around, it doesn't have to, you don't have to meditate and put yourself in a sensory deprivation tank or whatever. Like that is actually, I think honestly almost wrong, because you're trying to eliminate being in a moment. You're trying to almost eliminate feeling, and it's like sensory deprivation. I don't want to think. I don't want to see. I don't want to hear. I don't want to feel anything. Neutral water, temperature water in a tank that's pitch black, in a room that's pitch black with no sound. Like, what are you going to do in that circumstance? There's nothing to feel, or there's less to feel. There's definitely stuff to feel. You can't stop feeling, but there's less to feel and be aware of and present with. It's not the right course of action. It's like so oddly intentional, and it's like you've thought up this whole plan, and there's no way you do that without thinking about the fact that you've planned this, and now you're going to clear your mind. Clearing your mind doesn't mean eliminating experience. It means, if it means anything, just being present and feeling of your experience. Just being aware, like super aware of it. It's an important thing to practice. It's how you gain agency. You don't have to meditate, like sit in a quiet room. Some people, maybe that helps, but maybe it should, honestly, much more practically, it's like, I need to get better at just being present when I'm with my wife and present when I'm with my daughter, and not thinking about work or whatever. And then just set time for that's later, and that's much more practical than just getting good at feeling your own breath when you're sitting down alone in a room. This is like, what's the point? It's almost like it's like masturbation versus like actual sex. It's pointless, and it's by yourself. Whereas that's not how it should be. It should be, being present in the moment with others. Really, maybe that's God. But if you don't believe in God, or you don't, which really means you haven't defined God properly, and you're just alone, you're with no one, and that's not good. Like, it's pointless. That's the point. It's like, I'm getting good at feeling and being aware of my own breath. Okay, what's the use in that? I don't know. I'm not saying there doesn't, getting good at being present isn't widely applicable, but just, you can practice it by doing it. Like, you don't have to take yourself out of the world to practice being present in the world. You should just practice being present in the world. All right. I don't meditate. My meditation, I don't even know what is, if it's anything, is like, is if I'm by myself, is me focusing on God. So I don't feel by myself. Like, my goal is not to be by myself, and it's not focused on myself. It's focused on God and my relationship with him, and just being present with it. Like, not feeling like, oh my gosh, am I being judged for this or for that? Or, did I do this right? It's like, I am here because God wants me here, and I'm appreciative and grateful of being here, and for being in the search situation that I'm in, and for having the relationship that I have with God. Like, that's my like meditation. If it's anything, that's like when I'm by myself and I'm just contemplating, or like not even contemplating, but practicing being present by myself. That is useful. But if you don't believe in God, then I don't know what's the point? It's just like, I'm being really, really good at being aware of your own breath. I don't know what the point of that is. I'm not saying that it doesn't have any point, but I don't know what it would be. Okay, let's go here. Let's see. Please hit the like button, by the way, if you're watching this and you find it interesting. And if you don't, and you think, I don't know, whatever, if you have criticism, please put it in the comment section below. I will read it and take it seriously. Or suggestions, or whatever you have, whatever thoughts you have. I always read every comment. Look how fast butterflies versus spider moves. One of the coworkers also feeds the spiders along with his boys. Yeah, those garden spiders that I showed the clip of, they're so cool. It sucks they only live a year. Yeah. I like, my daughter still doesn't know that Charlotte is no longer with us, but Charlotte did leave an egg sac behind where her web was, and so I'm guessing that we will have baby Charlottes. I tell my daughter, there's baby Charlottes outside, and she like points to the window. She's like, baby Charlotte. Like, you don't want to miss that stuff. You want to be present with the people who matter most in your life, especially. And when you are, taking hours to just be alone in a room by yourself, focusing on your own breath, or you are going into a sensory deprivation tank, or whatever he was mentioning, where people are going into like dark retreats where they just go into a room with no light for a couple days. Like, you're missing out on like what matters most, like the most meaningful experiences. You're substituting for like the least meaningful experiences. I'm going to try and keep David Bowie spiders. I've seen one before. Those are pretty neat. They look terrifying. They look like the spiders from a movie Arachnophobia, which I love that movie. It's probably the best like animal monster movie out there. Is Arachnophobia. It's probably my favorite. I haven't seen the new Anaconda. I'm sure it's funny, but if you really like and are interested in animals and you know a lot about them, it's hard to watch some animal movies. But Arachnophobia it does it well enough to where it's like it's plausible enough, and it's scary enough actually. Okay, relax and remove the complex while we're experiencing the present. Yeah. Very hard and yet easy. Yeah, it's very simple, yet it can be very difficult. It's not hard yet easy. It's simple, but difficult. Bill Murray energy. Yes. Meditation should focus on the other inner mind. I know what that means. Yeah, I tried to keep you alive. You might as well just blindfold yourself. Yeah, exactly. Like, why are you blindfolding yourself? Just be present. It's very important, actually. Okay, self. You got to go quicker. I'm trying to end by midnight. I said that last time and we went way late, but
yeah, I mean,
somebody said, my wife tries to remind me of this all the time. She's like, don't share your plans, just do it. And it's such an important thing but I get conflicted about it because I feel like if I tell you guys, then it's possible for me to feel more accountable to it. But ultimately it comes down to like, probably just practice and discipline. Anyways, so like most things. So, and you don't want to, I don't know if announcing your plans helps, especially if you keep missing it. You're like, I'm trying to end by midnight. You keep ending after midnight. I'm trying to start by 9 p.m. Keep starting after 9 p.m. But I will say that I am trying to make the streams more accessible. And if you have any recommendations, like an announcement of the topic prior or something, whatever, that would help you plan to be here on the live stream, particularly if you're not watching live, then let me know in the comments. Okay. Here.
Just say I suppose the controversial element of what you're talking about is this notion of the self that you're describing. Quite famously, I think it's typically associated with Eastern or Indian philosophy, this idea that there is no such thing as the self, that it's a kind of illusion. Some people think that there is a self, but there's like only one of them that we all participate in. I think that you can broadly sort of divide up philosophical thought on mind and selfhood into these three categories of like how many selves there are. There's either lots and lots, which I think is typical of the Western tradition. We're all individual selves going about our business. There's only one, which is typically associated with like Hindu philosophy, and then there's none. There's no self at all, which is typically associated with Buddhism. I know you're of the no self view yourself, if you will, but I must say, when you talk about in a meditative practice becoming aware of the thoughts in your mind, and you can realize that the thoughts are just sort of appearing, as you say, in consciousness. It's difficult to understand quite what that means, but it's always difficult to put this kind of stuff into words. But okay, so my words are coming out of my mouth, and I've said this to you before, that as I'm speaking, because English is my first language, I'm not reflecting on every single word. They're just coming out, and they're appearing in my consciousness in a very similar way to the words that you say are appearing in my consciousness. I mean, the next time, anybody listening, or just do it if you don't mind looking a bit weird, just speak a sentence, just describe your day, say what you had for breakfast, and notice that the words you're using in particular are just sort of appearing. They're just coming out. You're not reflecting on every single word like you are when you're trying to say, je m'appelle Alex in a foreign language. Okay, cool. So these thoughts are just appearing. Then the question is like, where are they appearing? And you said a moment ago, well, the recognition that's crucial here is that what you're calling the self is just those thoughts. But I think experientially, a great many people will recognize that these thoughts and perceptions, if they're really talented, maybe the visions that they see, the visual input and the noises that they hear are appearing, but it's as if there is this thing upon which they're all imprinting themselves. And that is typically what people call the self. And the people who call that the self are not just people who have like failed to fully understand the nature of perceptions. Some of these people are the most sort of thoughtful, meditative people in the world who have a different philosophical outlook. So within Indian philosophy, I was fascinated to discover that in the so-called Sankhya school of Indian philosophy, there's a kind of dualism. And I thought that was interesting because in the Western tradition, we have this idea of dualism, that there's this mind stuff and there's this body stuff, and they somehow interact. And in the Western tradition, this has been a popular view for a long time. But in Sankhya, there's also a dualism, but it's not a dualism of mind and body. It's a dualism of, like, on the one side, mind and body, and on the other side, self, or something like self, I suppose. Because it's all of this stuff. It's the physical.
That's much more accurate, by the way. That Indian, I guess, like that perspective that he just gave. Your body is part of your mind. There isn't your mind and your body. There's like your body is part of your mind. So is your desk. That's why you should clean it. Clean your room, bucko.
My hand, I can see it as separate from me. So that causes the Western thinker, the Cartesian, to say, well, yeah, I can imagine my hand without my mind, so there must be two different things. But the Sankhya sort of follower goes, well, I can also kind of detach myself from my own thoughts and recognize that they're just appearing on this plane. But like Descartes, they kind of think, but there is something that the thoughts are happening to. There is the person that I experience as perceiving those thoughts. And so for them, they say that's what the self is. And the self is not the same thing as your thoughts and your feelings, and the self is this sort of one big thing that we all participate in. What I want to ask you is with a long-winded question perhaps, where are they going wrong? Because you take the view that actually that in itself is a mistake, that the thoughts are appearing, and it's not that they're appearing to you, there's just the thoughts. But you can understand the intuitive idea that as long as there are thoughts happening, they're sort of happening to someone or something.
Yeah. So first, to reconcile the apparent difference of opinion in Eastern philosophy, I think this is not something that any doctrinaire Buddhist or exponent of Indian philosophy would be likely to want to sign up to, at least without some caveats. But I think it's pretty clear that at least certain exponents within those various traditions are talking about the same insight. They're just using different language, right? So,
Yeah, okay.
so you can go. So the capital, whether you want to talk about what is left over when you transcend the illusion of small s self, if you want to talk about it positively as some big suchness, or capital S self, or some kind of unity experience, and you want to reify it in some kind of way, I understand the temptation there. I also understand and more aligned with the Buddhist critique of all that, which is to say there's a real liability in reifying that and in asserting its positive character in any way. And so from the Buddhist side.
Why? Why? I know why. Because there's another word for a capital S self. It's a title / name almost that we have for the capital S self, and that's God. And he is afraid of assigning character to that. And he doesn't want to. He says, I'm trying not to do that. Why? It seems inevitable given the rest of your philosophy. Yeah, he's wrong. Like this is an anti-ideology. It's anti-theism. It's not atheism. It's anti-theism. I remember he would say, atheism is I don't believe in God. It's I have a lack of a belief in a God, and that's just ridiculous. You can't have a lack of a belief about the fundamental nature of existence that we all experience every day. Do you believe that the universe or all of existence beyond you is someone? Or do you believe that it is inanimate dirt and dust? And that's it. And there's no someone. That's really what it comes down to. If you believe that the universe is someone, or that existence is someone, capital E, existence is someone, that you are in someone, then you believe in God. That doesn't make you Christian or Jewish or Muslim or whatever. Like, I'm not talking about specific scriptural traditions or theological traditions. I'm talking about just theism. And he's avoiding a theistic mentality. But if your worldview is based on avoiding, then it's not based on something true. Like you have to have something to believe in. You can't be like, well, I disbelieve in God. Somebody once said to me, they said, oh man, what was it? It was like, uh, some guy who was just spiraling about religion, and I'm not going to get into it, but I was like, do you believe in God? And he was like, whatever God you believe in, that's not the God I believe in. And I was like, he's like, I believe in the God in the God that isn't yours. And I was like, okay, but which then what is God to you? Like, who is that God that you believe in? And he was like, not your God. And I was like, that's not a belief. But you can't claim to be agnostic or to not have an opinion about it either. Everybody has a general assumption. Agnosticism doesn't exist. It's just cowardice. Really, you're either a theist who is in a room full of anti-theists and you're afraid to admit it, or you are an anti-theist in a room full of theists and you are afraid to admit it, or you, but like you can't actually have no stance on it. You can have no beliefs about Bigfoot, really, like real beliefs, if you've never looked into it. Like you can I assume Bigfoot doesn't exist because I've never seen Bigfoot and never seen pictures that are compelling of Bigfoot. I don't know. But I don't really have a belief about Bigfoot. Like I don't really care. And it's like very specific niche topic that like I've not exposed myself to beyond like whatever finds me without me looking. And so I can say I'm agnostic on Bigfoot, and or I'm agnostic about past lives or reincarnation. Like I tend to not care very much about that concept, even though I think it's possible. I also don't think that I don't worry about it much. I don't think it's up to us, and it shouldn't matter to us whether very much. It's like that's up to God. But some people might reincarnate, whatever that means. Some people might not. It doesn't matter. Especially if you don't remember it. Is it really like reincarnation? I have no idea. It's just not something that I really care much about. So I'm kind of agnostic on it, to be honest. People have asked me about it. I think it's possible within Sentient Singularity Theory. It isn't necessarily a requirement within Sentient Singularity Theory. And so it means it's up to God, and that means like I'm agnostic about it. And I can be agnostic about it, but I can't be agnostic about the nature of existence because we all experience it constantly. And so, and also same like with are you someone? And if you're like, no, there is no someone there, it's all an illusion. That I don't know how you even end up at that, other than you've failed to think at thinking about this in a proper way, like meaning like with trying to actually understand what is the truth about it. You might be thinking about how to disprove the self, and or you might misdefine something and then it kind of screws you up. But yeah, you don't have an anti-ideology. Anti-ideologies are purely destructive of your own thoughts. They're destructive of your own coherence. They're destructive of your ability to be coherent with others. They are destructive of your ability to be constructive in any way. That's why people who are, anti-fascists burn things and don't build things. But libertarians would build things when you'd think that it's the same ideology, but it's not. And I asked my friend, I was like, what is your primary political belief? Like, what is your primary political, like, your primary political goal? Like, what do you think is the most important thing? And he's like, I oppose fascism. I was like, okay, but what do you support? And it was like, I oppose fascism. I was like, that's okay. You don't have a belief about this that is proper, but yeah, you don't have a political belief. I'm not saying you have a belief that you have a political belief, but you don't actually have a political belief. It's like when I say, when I was telling my wife for a while, I want to work out, and I just don't. And every day I say, I want to work out, I want to work out, I want to work out, but then I just don't. And then I realized I don't want to work out. I want to work out. And the same thing can happen with us. We can trick ourselves into feeling like we're thinking when we're not. Or into thinking that we're thinking about something properly, but we're not. We're thinking about something else that is not the same.
They tend to want to talk in terms of what it's not. They negatively define it, and there are concepts like emptiness or selflessness or non-duality. Right. This is the language you get in various schools of Buddhism.
Yeah, and I hate
and
it.
I think that language is ultimately more philosophically defensible, but experientially, I think again, with certain.
Of course, he like I said, he says, I find this more philosophically defensible. It is impossible for that to be philosophically defensible. Really, like it's just not possible. You're defending non-existence. You're justifying non-existence. You're trying to explain why non-existence exists. That's what you're trying to do when you're like, I believe in non-duality. People have asked me, is your theory non-dual? Like, my theory is a theistic, is theism. You could say it's also in some ways panpsychist, but it's not panpsychist in the way that most people think. This Leatherman is not sentient in my model. Neither is this water bottle. But a proton, probably sentient. A cell, probably, almost certainly sentient. Some molecules, probably sentient. But Leatherman's, no, not sentient. But part of your mind, if you carry one every day, which I highly recommend if you're a man and you don't already, carry a Leatherman every day. It will expand your mind. Part of your mind is the boundary of your mind, and it's all caused by perception. So if you encounter a problem and it's like you don't have the ability to fix it, then you don't even think about like fixing it. You're not like, I can fix that if only. You're just like, oh, I can't do it. Gotta call someone else that can. But if you have this, you're like, oh, actually, I do have pliers and they could probably pull that out. But it expands your mind. It becomes part, just like your phone or a calculator becomes part of your mind. What is that? Language is the same thing. Language is how we've extended our minds. My daughter is not sleeping for like a week, like last week and the week prior, she was just not going to sleep at all until like midnight. She would sit in bed and just talk to herself and play with her stuffed animals and jump around and stuff. And it's because her speaking has just taken a leap, and her ability to imagine is taken a leap. And because of that, she has terms to associate with concepts, and that she can string together in her head to build something coherent and a coherent picture. Our language is part of our mind. When people ask like, are you an LLM? Are we just an LLM? No, we have an LLM built into like it's just language. And we use language. So it's like it's part of your mind, but it is not, you are not an LLM.
That I would agree to. They're talking about the same thing. They're talking about the transcendence of the starting point that most people will know all too well, which is, it's just me in here trying to figure out how to navigate the world, which is definitely not me, right? And by me in here, there's this. It's not that people are identified merely as being their physical body in a physical world that is not self. That the real starting point, at least for most people, is to feel that there's a self interior to the body, right? So if we just kind of build this up experientially from a kind of Cartesian starting point.
So, sentient singularity theory, when I was trying to make sense of how do we orient and think about the world, when I was trying to come up with how does the mind work, my big breakthrough that led to the rest of sentient singularity theory was the four primary perspectives. And as soon as I deduced those, everything else like flowed like that. Because I just built on it naturally. It just everything unfolded, and that's a sign that you've hit something true. But what he just said is the four primary perspectives are how we understand our world. What is whenever we have this idea of what is us, what is separate, what is not us, or what is some part of something and what is separate from something, and what is one with the house that I'm in and what is separate from the house. My neighbor's house is separate from my house, but my garage is one with my house. I am one with myself, but I am separate from you. I'm one with my wife. I'm separate from you. In some ways, I'm one with my wife in the context of our marriage, or me and my wife are one in marriage, in our marriage. Is a better way of putting it. And then you have inside and outside. This is how you have your thoughts inside of you, and that perspective of your feelings and your thoughts, and then you have what's outside of you, your actions, your words, and also those of others, and things that are outside of you. Same thing with a house. It's like what is inside of the house. You're inside the house because you know what it would be like to be outside the house. And you know what's outside the house because you know what it's like to be inside the house. And all of these are co-defining or codependent. So as soon as you are aware of one, say, I am inside my house. Well, that means I know also, if I know that, then it means that I know what it would mean to be outside my house. And I also know what it means to be me and what versus my house. And I know what is my house and what is not my house. And I know what is me and what is not me. And so inside, outside, separate, and oneness, as soon as you're aware of one, you are automatically aware of all four others. And this is how we constantly orient in the context of our experience, of our understanding, of our mind. This is the beginning of the structure of mind. It's the foundation of it. Other than oneness, which is, there's one experience, one experiencer, one mind. But within that, this is the partition structure that starts. And yeah, it's just how we orient in the world and in ourselves and in relationship with others.
The one thing that should be indisputable to everyone, though again you can find a few philosophers of mind who will demur even here, although I think this is a truly incoherent objection. The thing that you should not be able to doubt, and I would say the one thing that the one thing that is impossible to doubt is that something seems to be happening, right? There's an experience, right? And it doesn't matter whether we're brains in vats or the universe is a simulation, or if we're confused about everything, or I'm psychotic, and
That's wrong. It's not the one. I would agree. It's not that he's wrong. That is one thing that we all seem to be able to agree upon, or can have no doubt of. But actually, what's more fundamental than that is that someone exists to experience. You can't say what we all know more truly than anything else is that there is something happening. No, what we all know more truly than anything else is that someone exists. At least us. That's what we know more than anything else. And it also seems like there are things happening that we are not causing, which implies that there is something going on beyond us, which implies other things, but ultimately it all leads back to theism, which is he's avoiding. Which is, you can't say the one thing we know more than anything else is that someone exists, because it's just like too obviously has theistic implications. You can't avoid it.
It doesn't matter how confused we might be about what's happening. Something seems to be happening for each of us, right? There's this, and that is the fact of consciousness, right? So when I use consciousness as a noun, I'm not talking about the self. I'm not talking about a person. I'm not talking about anything apart from the fact that the lights are on in some sense. Something seems to be happening. The universe, whatever it is has a qualitative character right here, and now the question is what's happening, when who is here to make sense of anything, right? What's real? And this is the place from which we do science. This is the place from which we do philosophy, and this is the place from which we live our lives and try to avoid pain and grasp pleasure. And this is the place. This phenomenological starting point. Just the lights are on and something seems to be happening. Is the place from which we make these mouth noises that have meaning and cultural reference points. And from which we build up a second person and third person type of discourse, such that we can make sense of the world conceptually and do science and do philosophy and all the rest. So, but the thing is, you never ever escape this first person starting point, which is there's something that it's like to be what you are.
Yeah.
And now let's figure out what you are. And so,
you're someone.
just putting this in neurological terms, we are, when you ask yourself what our brains are doing now, our brains are representing a world, right? You with your eyes open, you see your visual field, you feel your body resting in space, you have your five senses, and you have other senses like proprioception, right? And we've begun to understand a lot of this neurologically. But your brain doesn't just do that. It represents the body itself in the world, right? So there's the world, there's the body itself in the world, again, with senses like proprioception and even just vision. Part of your visual field is to see the side of your own body and to conceptually represent that as distinct from the world. Your autonomous movements of your body produce a further mapping, right? And the predictive coding around all of that, where you can anticipate that, you seem to anticipate what you're going to do next, such that what you do next feels different from just having, the wind blow the leaves in the trees. That's also motion, but it's not your motion, because your motion is the motion you're making with your hands intentionally, say. So there's this mapping of self and world, which is sensory, it's motoric, right? Your brain is doing all of this. But in addition to that, in addition to representing the world, in addition to representing the body in the world, the brain also forms this representation of a self or subject interior to the body, right? And that is the sense that is truly specious. That is the thing that evaporates when you pay close attention to it in the requisite way, which is meditation by another name. And
that is wrong. The idea that the problem is that he's focusing on the brain. The brain is just it's kind of contradictory to what he even said. Is like we've constructed a perception of our own body, but when we look at it, we're like, that's my hand. Okay, I can look at I could look at my own brain. People do it and get brain surgery and they stay awake sometimes, and like you I'm sure they could hand you a mirror. You can look at the brains of others, like you can look at parts of like aspects of yourself that we would perceive as components of our body. And what we're actually looking at is causality, is limits or like dimensions of causality, essentially. It's like we're looking at that which is being caused inside my body by other beings, cells, molecules, atoms, whatever, but that are within your body, within the assembly that is of sentience that is like forms your body. And we also can look at our physical body as like as the limits of our causal abilities in terms of our interaction with the world that appears to be beyond us, meaning really like beyond our initial causality. It's like I can pick, I view my hand and it allows me to view the limit of my ability to pick up this water bottle and move it. But then also the water bottle is different. Like that's separate from me. It was caused by, it had a cause beyond me. The molecules, the atoms in this, and then the water bottle itself, that even like all of that has causes beyond me. And so we're just navigating causality, and we are observing like causal constraints or the limits of causality in the contexts of specific perspectives on the causality going on around us. But where he gets this wrong is like when you look at your hand and he says the brain is forming the image of our hands. But the brain is a physically perceived structure just like the hand. So what's actually happening is that the mind that you are, not that you have, but that you are, is creating certain structures according to certain patterns. And that, when you say it like that, it's not, there isn't a physical starting point like he's kind of assuming here, is that the brain is doing this, but also is creating like the perception of the physical body, the perception of the world around us, the perception of light, the perception of color, the perception of even our feelings. But then that doesn't make sense, because the brain is a physically perceived structure. So what's happening is the mind is doing this, and when you look at it like that, you don't get this weird contradiction where you're assuming that. This is hard to explain because I haven't thought through it exactly how to explain it, but he's basically saying that our perceptions are created by the brain of our body, even of our physical body, of the world beyond our body is created by the brain. But also what is created by the brain is our perception of the self. That's what he's saying, is the interior perception of like the non-physical self. And he's saying that doesn't make sense and that disappears in the right context. He is unable to even speak and make a coherent sentence without contextualizing it within the context of someone. When he says what all of us seem to be able to agree on is that something is happening. But he's actually like focusing on the somethingness, not the someoneness that is actually the context of the somethingness that we're perceiving. And the context that is of something is primary to whatever that the perspective is that is contextualized within that context. So you can't say something is happening and that's more fundamental than the someone that is experiencing this something. And he's doing that. And that makes no sense. And part of it comes down to like linguistic errors, because and also just like assumptions about like what the brain and does, and like mixing up of the term brain and mind. But and you can, to illustrate this, I will show you, like, if we're going to look at mental structures like the four primary perspectives, or which has three interior distinct perspectives, really, and one exterior distinct perspective, if you could say. I don't even know if that's the right way to put it, but it just depends on who you're thinking, if you're thinking about this from your perspective or thinking about someone else. But if we look at this type of mental structure right here, what I call the symmetric set that we perceive everywhere. He's like, we observe colors. Our brain does it. We observe our hands. Our brain creates this perspective. No, there's a mental structure going on, and there's a context to it that I shown that this is due to our perception of our causal constraints in the context of the causality being from that is from the being that we're within, basically. So when you're a cell inside a body, or you are a person inside the universe or inside of God, and there's these two beings, a mind inside a mind, there's this overlap of interaction that occurs, and it's two four-dimensional minds overlapping because of two of the four dimensions of the primary perspectives here. Each mind has four primary dimensions. That's why we perceive four as a complete number, like four fundamental forces, the four, legs on a table to make it stable, the four wheels on a car to make it stable, the four chord songs to make him, be able to like express movement and completeness, I guess, or causality and completeness. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. It's like 1, 2, 3 leaves you like wanting something else, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like it completes the loop. But that's why every song is a four-chord song, that they say. But when you have two four-dimensional minds overlapping, you get this. And that leads to the perception of. Where is it? That symmetric set that I was showing right here. And so you see things when you look at yourself, and you'll see, like, you look at your limbs. You're like, I see arms and legs and hands and feet and fingers and toes. It's a fractal that you're basically like perceiving. You look at your finger and you'll be like, I see finger and knuckle and fingernail, and something like that. I haven't thought enough about it, but it would follow the same pattern, basically. And toe and toe knuckle and toenail, basically. And then you look at your nail, you'll see the tip of your nail and the that's like white, and then you'll see like the middle of it, and then you'll see like the beginning of it that's also like white. I don't know. I'm not I don't even know the name of somebody who does manicures and pedicures of people, but like they would know the correct terms of these parts of your nail, and I don't. But that's there, and you could see this with colors. The primary colors and secondary colors are this, and how we perceive our family and everything. Our senses. There's 6 senses. One of them is emotion. That's the one everybody forgets. It's your feeling yourself. It's your super sense, really. It's like the sense of yourself. But you have sight and smell and hearing and emotion and taste and touch. And sight and smell and hearing are for perceiving that which is perceived as beyond you. Remember, this is the context. If this is you inside of God, or this is a cell inside of you, there's 3 things coming from beyond you and 3 things that are coming from you. And so when you look at this, sight and smell and hearing are for perceiving things that appear to be separate from you. Remember, the 4 primary perspectives, inside, outside, separate, and oneness. And then there's emotion and taste and touch. And touch and taste and emotion are always senses that are for like when something appears to be contacting you in a way that is no longer that you are no longer able to like disassociate from. Something touches your tongue. You are being, there's causality happening that's includes you. You touch something with your hand. There's causality happening that includes you. You feel your emotion. There's causality happening that you are perceiving that is in the context of yourself. Same thing with taste and touch. It's impacting you when something causes an emotion, something causes you to taste it, or something causes you to touch it. But sight and smell and hearing, it's perceived as that which is beyond you. So people will say, smell is really just taste. And you're just tasting microscopic particles of whatever it is, that's in the air. but that's a physicalist perspective, like focus. It's not necessarily wrong in a physical context, but it's not fundamental. It doesn't explain what's happening. You need the context to explain what's happening, and I showed it to you. You're a mind inside a mind. You're two four-dimensional minds, and you have a triality of experience and causality overlapping. And because everybody has an interior self, and so that just can't be. That is like that thing that is reserved for. It's not part of that overlap, I guess. And so this is it's taste and smell are very different also, though, they're in how you interpret them. And also goals contextualize how, taste and smell as well. That's why every little kid learns that like the soap that smells like a smoothie doesn't taste like a smoothie, and so you shouldn't eat it. But if taste and smell are the same, then like, what's your goal? You eat it. If, like I got some new strawberries the other day, and they were like hydroponic strawberries, and I brought them home, and I was like, I opened up the bag from the grocery store, and I just smelled strawberries. They were so incredibly fragrant. It was amazing. It was like strawberry perfume, and I had made my wife smell them. I was like, smell these, this is amazing. And there are shampoos that smell exactly like that, and every little kid tastes it at one point. And I just remember being confused as very young, feeling confused as to like why the soap that smelled like cherries and strawberries and whatever tasted bitter and awful. But like why don't you eat the bar of soap if it smells the same as the strawberry? Because there's something about you prioritizing one sense over the other when it comes to determining whether or not you should eat something. Durian is the opposite. Durian smells awful. It tastes amazing. It tastes very good, but it smells really bad. And but people eat it, even though it smells like rotten flesh or rotten cheese, and it just smells like rotten. And yeah, people eat it. It's delicious. It tastes like vanilla, and like fruit, like creamy, fruity, like somewhat garlicky goodness. It's very good, but it smells awful. So taste and smell are not the same thing. How your mind, not your brain, your mind, which is inclusive of the context that you're operating in always, it interprets information and processes information includes your goals it like determines whether or not something whether or not a sense is good or bad or relevant or irrelevant. And it's just odd that there are three senses that are for perceiving things that you perceive as separate from you, and then there's three senses that are when you are actually experiencing causality that you can't that you are directly being impacted by, I guess. You're being changed by, versus like smell and sight. It's like you can see something that, and then continue. You can see someone get punched and continue going on with your day. But if you get punched, like you are going to be impacted. And it's just about the limits of causality. But he's not thinking about it like that. He's using the term mind and brain interchangeably. A lot of, not necessarily Sam Harris in this context, but he's using the brain and to explain things that the mind is actually able to explain. Why do we see 3 primary and 3 secondary colors? The mind explains that, not the brain, actually. You can't physically explain the perception of a physical structure with physics. You can't. And yeah, but people try, and you get this. Probably didn't do a very good job of explaining that. Oh man, is it midnight? Okay, we're gonna almost done.
That evaporation feels like something. To lose that sense
is quite a striking experience, and everything's is still there. Thoughts still arise, and you can still see the world and
to lose the sense of self, but is a crazy experience. He says, for who? Who's experiencing it? It's incoherent.
Still moving the leaves in the trees, and you can still reach for your glass of water and distinguish that motion as a voluntary motor
You can
plan
still
from
reach for
another motion of a tremor or something that would be involuntary, right? There's you don't become stupid or insane, right, or any other way non-compos mentis, but what you can lose, and again, this is really this kind of the center of the bullseye meditatively, is you can lose the sense that there's a center to all of that, right? That there's a subject riding around on the top of the on the horse of consciousness, directing things, right? So that you can lose the sense that there's a thinker of your thoughts, in addition to the thoughts themselves, right? There's just thought.
That's true, but it's not about thinking. It's about feeling. You as someone are not defined by thinking and not defined by your thoughts, just like he said. They occur, and you can get better at controlling them, but they're not you. And he's right, but he doesn't say what you are, and it's feeling. You cannot stop feeling. You cannot. Experiencing is feeling. Seeing is feeling. Touching is feeling. Hearing is feeling. Smelling is feeling. Tasting is feeling. Feeling emotions is feeling. You can't ever stop that. But yeah, you can stop thinking. Sometimes you should. It's like just like exercising or moving or running or jumping. Like sometimes you should stop. It's exhausting. It takes energy. Feeling is unavoidable, and it is just not even unavoidable. It's intrinsic. It's intrinsic. So he's making a mistake, and he's saying he's correct in saying you are not your thoughts. But he's wrong in saying that but he also is kind of like assuming that your thoughts are you. And so if there is no thoughts, then there is no someone. And that's not true, because the someone is the feeler, and they can be a thinker, but they are a feeler. And sometimes your thoughts are not controlled by you, but your feelings are never controlled by you. Like you have no control over your feelings. The best thing that you can do with your feelings is to like work through them and learn how to deal with them, and maybe change your situation to change your feelings, change your perspective to change your feelings. But you cannot control your feelings like you can your thoughts, where you can kind of shut it off. You can't shut it off. You can just change them. Kind of. But not by changing them. You can't be like, I'm going to be happy now. You got to be like, I just need to do something that brings me joy, and so I'm going to go skydiving, if that's your thing, or whatever it is. Hang out with your kid, go on a date with your wife. Like those actions, you're not changing your feelings just by changing your feelings. You're changing the circumstances of your experience. You're changing your experience, and that will change your feelings. So it's indirect. This is a big problem though, with Sam Harris, and part of it is the fact that people are so focused on thinking and make it kind of like it's prioritized above feelings. It's like thinking of when people talk about someone is just too emotional to see the truth, and the truth is something that is felt and can be deduced and thought up, but like it's not. But ultimately, like it's only confirmed by experience and feeling. So it's just got this. The feelings just have this connotation, is what I'm trying to say, of being irrational, and being and not that you should, or that there's something that you should not prioritize above your thoughts. You should if you want to be as accurate as possible in your understanding of the world, you should, not you should prioritize logic above emotion, or which leads people to think you should prioritize thoughts above feelings. And Ben Shapiro, facts don't care about your feelings. God cares about your feelings. That doesn't mean that he cares about your feelings as much as he cares about his feelings, but he does care about your feelings. And if there isn't a greater fact than God, then I don't know. But here. Pantheism.
And so maybe there is just like in a pantheistic sense, right? Maybe there's just this great mind, which is the universe, and there's something it's like to be the universe.
Yep.
But there's also something it's like to be me, and something it's like to be you.
Yep.
But only insofar as we're participating in this great big thing
Yep.
in an analogous way to how there's something it's like to be the left hemisphere and something it's like to be the right hemisphere. And yet there's also this sort of combination of experience that happens.
I don't agree with the
And so-
as soon as you start focusing on the hemispheres of the brain and stuff, I think that it gets people really confused. And because you're using physical structure to try and or physically perceived like structure, and you're equating it to like fundamental sentience, and it's just not the same. It is a better way of putting it is us inside the universe is like our cells inside of that make up our body inside of us. That's a right way to put it, not a right hemisphere and left hemisphere. That's a mistake. This is like another great breakthrough was for me in Sentient Singularity Theory is when I saw people trying to create a hierarchy of mind or hierarchy of being. And people have been trying to do this forever. And they'll be like, there's mineral mind and plant mind, and then animal mind, and then human mind. And then there's like, there's society, and then there's planet, and then there's solar system, and then there's galaxy, and then there's universe. And you have jumped between sentient beings and non-sentient beings in this, and you have been misled. So when it's the same thing when people are like, oh, it's like the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere is like us inside of the universe, and the universe is a mind and we're a mind. Now, your one hemisphere of your brain is not a mind. It's a perception of a information structure that is being generated by your mind. As like a part of your body, but it's not there's no one there inside of your right hemisphere of your brain. There's just you inside of you totality, and then there is someone inside of each of your cells, and there is someone that is you as a human being. But there's no like two different people, one inside of your right hemisphere, one inside of your left hemisphere. And I think that when people say that there's been like, I don't know, people that have had injuries and things like that, and that have proved that, or split personality disorder, I think that doesn't prove anything. There is always only someone present. And the fact that there doesn't seem to be coherence in that someone is evidence of other issues that don't invalidate the fact that someone is there always. Like and I'm not, they would be specific to each circumstance. But I don't know. It would depend on the exact individual in which like people are accusing of having multiple people inside of them. That's not true.
I don't know.
That to me seems like what the idealist is kind of getting at.
Yep.
Great big mind out of which stuff is sort of divvied up, and maybe that can help illuminate how there can be sort of an end to my experience and things beyond that, despite there being nothing but mind.
Exactly
And I'm throwing it
what
all
I
out here, but the other
said.
thing is to say that, yeah, like idealism or panpsychism has this kind of problem, but the materialist arguably has a much bigger one, which is this problem of emergence, which is that, like, yeah, the panpsychist idealist has to account for how there can be a world out there that I'm not conscious of, but the materialist struggles to account for the phenomenon in the first place, for the experience of the world, like, at all. It seems even more mysterious. So if there's anything in that torrent of words, which, as I've already clarified, I wasn't fully cognizing as they came out, so don't blame me, that you want to pick up on,
Yeah.
let me know what you think.
Well, so to start with, you haven't named it, but what you've described is what David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness, which is the fact that this notion of emergence, right? The notion that the lights come on, you have a collection of neurons or information processing units of any kind, and this could happen in our artificial intelligence as well. You have some collection of stuff, which there's nothing that it's like to be, right? The lights are not on, it's not conscious, but if you arrange it in the right way, if it does the right kind of computation, if it's processing information the right way, if it has the right functional characteristics, the right input-output characteristics, um, or some other magic, sauce of organization, by dint of that fact, the lights come on, right? And that is not fundamentally non-explanatory and non-intuitive and it is really the statement of a miracle, right? It's like it's analogous to saying of the universe, that first there was nothing and then there was something, right? You ask you ask the timeless question, why is there something rather than nothing? There's no good intuitive answer for it if, in fact, what happens is everything just springs out of nothing, right? And by everything, we also mean the laws of the universe by which any set of somethings would be organized, right? So there was really nothing, and then there was something, right? And we're now living out the consequences of that something. Well, if that's true, if that's what the Big Bang really was, right? And the Big Bang was not just this sort of local emergence out of some background condition that we can't understand, but really there was no background condition that had to bang too, right? So there's really nothing, and then there's something. That's just a statement of a miracle. The emergence of consciousness, for anyone who's sensitive to this intuition, is a statement of a very similar miracle, but it's just a kind of subjective version of that. It's the first person version of that third person miracle, which is first there's nothing experientially. The lights are not on in any sense, right? There's just dumb rocks out there, and then something gets organized in a certain way, and then there's something that it's like to be that clump of matter. Um, there's nothing explanatory about that. There's no, but that doesn't mean it's not true, right? That's the problem. That's where the materialist can truly bite the bullet and say, there's no guarantee that every true statement of fact scientifically is something that we are going to understand intuitively, right? In fact, given what we think we are, the evolved social primates, um, we should be not at all surprised to discover that the fundamental truths of the universe are so deeply non-intuitive that we just have to accept them as brute facts, because we're apes that just are not evolved to form the right intuitions about the way the world works. So the fact that
I think he's so far off base on this right now, and but again, it's a focus on the physical. When we're just apes that didn't evolve. It's like, no, you are someone. We're talking about like understanding fundamental reality. What are you fundamentally? You're not an ape fundamentally. You are like physically, but not. But that's not who you are. It's what you are. It's not who you are. Funny, I wrote something I had like brilliant thought recently, and it was oh man, what was it? I wrote it down because I knew I was going to forget it, and I wanted to talk about it. Yeah, okay, somebody said what's up memes, and so somebody said that they were using the example of like that our tastes and our preferences and our feelings about things and our thoughts about things all change all the time, and so then how can we, if basically they were saying like a person has an injury, right? And then they didn't like chocolate before. Now they love chocolate, and they used to be terrible at math, and now they're really good at math. And they used to like rock, and now they hate it, and they like classical music, which they used to hate. Like, and everything about their preferences and tastes and goals even changed. And so that they were using that as evidence that the brain is who you are. And that's wrong. And I was saying what's changing is not who you are, it's how you are that's changing. How I am, not who I am. And you can, that there's very different things. And you being an ape, you know, like that's bipedal and has a complex language and whatever, like that's how you are. But it's not who you are. You are someone. And if existence is someone, then yeah, you should definitely be able to, that should be intuitive. And it is. I mean, and the, like when, to say, oh, well, you know, we assume that there was nothing and then somehow there was something and we can't explain it. And you know what? Some things are just beyond explanation. No, you just failed. And we have to call it out. You failed. But the thing is that most people can't actually give enough of an explanation for why in outside of a theistic context and or theological or religious tradition, and they use an entirely different language, and it just doesn't register with people who don't use that language. But the reality is that if there's only one existence, and it has to exist, because existence exists by definition. Non-existence doesn't exist by definition. So you can't say there was at one point fundamentally nothing, and then there was something. And then with consciousness, he's saying there was no one, and then there was someone. That doesn't seem to make sense. And he admits it, because it doesn't make sense. Because no one can't exist. Because non-existence doesn't exist, and if there's only one existence, and it is apparently containing of information, according to our first-person experience, then, and it, according to it being existence itself, of what? At least information, at least. Well, okay, it's information informs by definition. Okay, so you have one single self-contained, meaning self-referential, because there's nothing else to reference other than what itself, because it is all of existence, some single self-referential information system that cannot not exist. That's where you start. Okay, that sounds like someone, actually. They're basically a self-referential information system that is entirely self-referential, meaning it is completely and entirely aware of itself. That is someone. And if that's not someone, then I don't know what someone would be. And it's a thing that's aware of itself. That's what someone is. Someone is aware of themselves because they're someone to be aware of. It's just inevitable. It's logically inevitable, given the constraints and the definitional constraints of existence, and the nature that it would. It's all encompassing and totalizing nature, leading to it being an inevitable singular structure that is apparently an information structure to everyone, undeniably. Like he says, something is happening that we can perceive. And also internally, part of it, the truest thing that we know is that we exist. I am. And that's because I feel, not because I think, but because I feel. I feel, therefore I am, is a much better statement than Descartes' I think, therefore I am. Not that what he said is false, because, you know, only someone can think, but they don't have to. But someone must feel. That's the defining characteristic of someone. And if something has no feelings, then it is not someone. It's just something. So it is inevitable, it seems, logically, that existence is someone. Because they feel. What does it mean to feel? It means to be aware. It means to sense the self. To sense the self. When you see something that makes you sad, and you feel sad, and or like you see something happen and you interpret it as being sad and you feel sadness, or you see somebody get hurt and they're crying, and then you get sad. Why? Because you think about being sad. And you feel it. You like visualize it, whatever. You feel it. You think about it and you feel it. You feel it. Which is and what are you feeling? You're feeling yourself. You're feeling the impact of something on you. Something is sad or something makes you angry because it feels because of how it impacts you or how you perceive it to impact you. Something makes you happy because of how you perceive it to impact you. If it has no impact on you, it will not produce a feeling. If you perceive it as having no impact on you, it won't produce a feeling. But if you perceive it as having an impact on you, or you think about being in that person's situation which you're seeing that appears to be unfortunate or fortunate or whatever, and it makes you feel a certain way, you're sensing yourself. God has initially, before he created anyone else within him, by partitioning his oneness of self, which really means his oneness of will, into multiplicity of wills, like giving freedom of wills. Means like you can choose a goal that is not God's goal, and he can choose a goal that is not your goal. And it's best to change your goal because his will be done. But this is actually like very, very logically simple and inevitable. I hope I'm explaining it somewhat. But existence is by definition singular, and it is apparently informational, and therefore it is entirely self-referential because there's nothing else outside it to be referenced. And that means initially there's one thing that's entirely self-referential and entirely self-informed by itself of itself. And that's feeling. That is feeling, because what feeling is the awareness of self. It's our perceiving of our own selves. God can only, at least initially, perceive his own self. So he can't everything that he experiences is feeling, initially at least, or primarily. And that's the same with us. So what happens when like your logical deduction about like existence also completely reflects your internal first person experience of yourself and selfhood? Maybe it's just right. It sounds a lot better. It seems to make a lot more sense. Please let me know in the chat or in the comments down below. Like if that makes a lot more sense than, yeah, it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to make sense because we're just apes. You failed. And you don't get to just say, well, that's just the way that it is. And you can't tell me that that's not the way that it is. No. When else in any circumstances, your inability to come up with an answer, an acceptable answer that is still considered an answer? Never. So he's wrong.
Mechanics is something we can't really understand, even though we can use it.
He's like, we don't understand quantum mechanics, but we can use it. No, some people understood quantum mechanics enough to be able to intuitively deduce and make predictions about like its structure and things about it, and its and certain properties and aspects of quantum mechanics. And it's just that like the people today have lost that intuitive ability because they weren't the ones that came up with it. They just learned what others had done. And yeah, you understand it well enough to have memorized what we already have observed about it. And so you can use it. So you can't say, oh, we don't really understand it. No, you don't really understand it. But it is possible to understand it. It's actually, I think, much simpler. I'm not saying I can tell you everything about quantum mechanics, but I have I think that I can have a pretty decent understanding of a lot of things that people think are so unintuitive and like, waves and particles, and what, where you can't measure the velocity and the position of a particle at the same time. It's like that's all actually very easily explained if you think about it in the right context, or at least in the context of sentient singularity theory. It's very intuitive. But even you start to think about, like, what is an electron? It's a point of focus. You're perceiving something that is moving, a point, but a single point of something that's moving, and you're only looking at just a part of it because of the constraints of focus that come from mind. Like, you can only focus on one thing at once by definition. And so if you're looking at a wave, you just, like in the ocean even, you cannot simultaneously measure how fast it's going and also where it is, because those are two different perspectives of a wave. One of them is focusing on it moving. One of them is focusing on it not moving. It's just where it is right now. And like taking a picture of it. And the other one is watching a movie and clocking it. How quickly does it go from there to there? And it's a totally different context that you are perceiving. Your goal is, and it's entirely determined by your goal. Do you want to know how fast the wave is going, or do you want to know where it is, right at a specific moment? You can get both bits of information, but you cannot observe both of those things at the same time. And it's very obvious why that's the case once you understand what you're looking at. A particle is a point on a wave, which is really just means you're looking at a small point or portion of a giant hole that you're within, and you're perceiving it as a point, and we call it a particle, and people assume that they think of like a grain of sand, when it's really a point of focus or a point of force. In the case of like quarks, it's like they're points of force very clearly that are coming from the universe that we can perceive. And what is an electron? It's very clearly us observing movement of the movement of the universe, but just a point, a very small portion of it. You perceive it as a small thing, but it's really like you're just looking at a small portion of a moving structure that you're within. It's not that unintuitive, but most people aren't thinking about it like this because the context is wrong. They're assuming that it's that you don't start with someone, and then it's not intuitive because it doesn't make sense. And he admits it. He's like, that doesn't seem to make sense, but it doesn't have to make sense. Okay, then why are you trying to understand anything at that point? Everything about like philosophy and the point of it, and like, why are you even thinking and feeling and meditating and whatever at this point? If you think that the answer is there, that you can't get to the answer because you've reached a point where things don't make sense, and that you just can't explain it because you're just some ape. Why keep philosophizing? It's incoherent. The idea that the universe is not intuitive depends on your perspective.
See, the best predictor of the behavior of matter, the smallest level that we have, and yet when we try to form a realistic picture of the way
the world is on its basis, we get just nothing but weirdness. So weird that you got a bunch of physicists now claiming that to believe that there are a functionally infinite number of worlds that are decreasingly like the one we're in now, where they're infinite copies of ourselves having slightly different versions of this conversation as the worlds get further and further away. There are physicists, including Sean Carroll, who I think you've spoken with, also David Deutsch and others, who say, yeah, this is the way the world is. There are many worlds, right? That thesis is perhaps the next most incredible thesis to the one I just sketched, which is everything came out of nothing, right? There was nothing, really nothing, not even laws of nature, and then we got everything, including the laws of nature, right? If ever there was something that should be hard to believe, it should be that. None of this, I'll just point out to the uncomfortable atheists in our audience, none of this, I think, gives ammunition to the the theologians who would say, well, see, you've just given us the best argument for the existence of God. No, because I mean, you haven't explained God there. You've just asserted his existence, right? I mean, yeah, yes, God could create all of this, but that explains absolutely nothing. What is God, and how did he get a mind, and how could it be such a complex thing that so as to have intentions to create all of this, and also to not like homosexuals, after all of that work was done.
And there it is. He hates who he thinks God is, and who he thinks God is not who God is. God doesn't hate anyone who he has created, at least initially. You have to assume that, otherwise why would he make you? And we all have individual challenges, but like, yes, he's first of all, just not to get too into morality, but like he's confusing our actions with our desires. You don't choose your desires. You don't, but you choose your actions, or you can choose your actions. You can't choose your desires or I don't think that you can choose your sexual preferences, but you can choose your sexual actions. I think God doesn't want us, like, men and women to be sleeping with each other outside of marriage. But people do it. Does that mean he hates straight single people? No, it just means like he doesn't want us using each other, and he doesn't want us doing things that are destructive. You don't choose to like heroin, but you do choose to do it, and like your parent doesn't hate you because they don't want you doing heroin. It's like, but I like heroin. And so, like, it just doesn't make. I don't understand why that's so complicated. But I remember Dennis Prager was talking to Dave Rubin on Dave Rubin's show. Dennis Prager went on Dave Rubin's show. This was before I worked for PragerU, which if you didn't know, I used to work for PragerU for a long time. And but before that, my first time I ever even heard of Dennis Prager, I was watching Dave Rubin's show, and I think I'd heard about him through like Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder or something. And Dave Rubin is attracted to men, and he's interviewing Dennis Prager, who's a theist, and also like somebody who's believes in the biblical scriptures, I guess. And so Dave Rubin was like, why he was like basically asking like, why does do you think he was asking about marriage, and he was like, why is it wrong for like two gay people to be married? Because legally speaking, Dave Rubin is married to a man named Dave, actually. And which is funny. Dave is married to Dave. And I used to work with Dave Rubin. He's a very nice guy. But he was, and Dennis Prager was like, I don't support the legalization of, or the incorporation is really a better way of putting it. Marriage as being defined legally also two men, and or same-sex marriage. And he kind of gave his reasoning for it. And I was an atheist at the time, and I was like, or an anti-theist, and I don't hate gay people. But I used to think that like religious people did, and I was listening to Dennis Prager, and he's like, if you do that, you change the definition of marriage, and he's like, I don't think that is the definite, like that is actually the definition of marriage, is that you're destroying the definition of marriage really if you change it from what it has to be. Just like we know you cannot just change the meaning of a word because you want to. The meaning of a word is built in an etymological and context, and a cosmological context that you don't just get to change because of your desires. And I was like, wow. and he was so kind to Dave Rubin, and the best way to spread the gospel is to live it, and I saw a religious person who believed in God being kind to somebody who was, engaging in behavior that he thought was immoral and also wrong, and that he opposed. It changed my perspective on religious people, but it also changed my perspective on like how I should consider religion, but it didn't cause me to become a theist. This project caused me to become a theist. Trying to understand AGI and then my own mind caused me to realize that the universe and existence itself is almost certainly a mind. It can't not be. It's someone. It's just the logical inevitability. And you shouldn't look to the physical world to try and figure that out at first, because there's just boundaries to your ability to perceive what we're trying to actually understand in that context. Is you can only feel your own self. You can't see anyone else's self or feel anyone else's self. You don't even know if your dog is a sentient being, but you assume it, but you don't know. You can't look to the physical world for answers about like sentience. It doesn't make sense. And so you have to look inward, and you have to look at information itself, and look at the structure of mind in your own mind. Observe the process of that your mind goes through, and observe the observations that your mind makes, the experiences that your mind is experiencing, that you are experiencing. And that's how you do it. And you start realizing, like, every time I look over there and there and there and there and there, and getting this like 6-dimensional structure, I look at colors, I look at color mixing, I look at limbs, I look at senses, I look at sense organs, I look at PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, the order of operations in mathematics, and it's everywhere. You're seeing past a single circumstance, and you're looking at your own mind, because you're looking at what's ever present in every circumstance. The pattern, the symmetry pattern that is there, that symmetry pattern is the mind. The mind makes sense of information through symmetries, through the observation of symmetries, or the perception of symmetries. This and not that. This and then that, and then that. This is all about causal structure and symmetry structures. But Dave Rubin is like, he has a false understanding of God. God loves you if you are here. You have to assume that. He chose to make every single someone that has ever been born into the world. It is it seems inevitable that he had to choose it for every single time, for every single person. And he didn't have to, because we know that there can be a body and cells and all these things together, and then all of a sudden there's no one there, because people die. And like, there is, it's not just any situation in which sentience can be embodied. There's a specific circumstance and in which sentience is embodied, and it's but ultimately what that means is the greater sentience, the whole of God, of existence itself as someone, has to partition part of their being into us, and like tie it into a little circumstance. It's like a big loop of string that's tying itself into little knots within itself, with little loops within itself, and a big sentient string, and that is not a natural phenomenon. That is something that takes a choice, because oneness is the default. It is existence by definition is all encompassing and total, meaning it is one. So to have multiplicity within it takes a choice. It's like swimming upstream takes a choice. It doesn't just happen. Multiplicity of being does not just happen. It must be chosen by God each and every time. And so you should not assume God doesn't hate homosexuals. He doesn't want us to do behaviors that are destructive. And it's not restricted to homosexuals. Like, it's just everybody sins. He doesn't want any of us to do it. Because he loves us. When you don't want people to do destructive things, that it is because you care about them. If you were like, I don't care if that guy does heroin, it's because you don't care about that guy. But if you're like, it's your daughter or your son, you're going to be like, I don't want them to do heroin. Or you do want them to do heroin probably because you do heroin and you don't want to give up heroin. And so you're like, I love heroin more than I love my kid. So I mean, I know people that did drugs with their kids, like a lot of them. I mean, drinking is the same thing. But if you know that it's bad, but you still do it, and you also like encourage it in your kid, it's usually because you have a problem with it too. But nobody wants the people that they care about to do things that are harmful to themselves. And if God cares about everybody, so he doesn't want us harming anyone. And that's, and he's wise enough to know what is harmful. And we are not wise enough to know everything that's harmful. It takes time and wisdom and experience to learn what is harmful. My daughter, gosh, she fell off of, I was at I went to the botanical gardens with my wife, over the weekend, and my daughter was sitting on a bench, and she's at the stage where she just does not stop moving, and she throws herself back, and she does it to entertain herself. She does it when she's mad. She does it to be whatever. It doesn't matter why she's doing it, but she's doing it, and she's learning that you can't just do that because it's bad for you. She threw herself back off the bench and fell right off the bench. My wife was like, "Oh, why didn't you stop her?" And I usually do, but my dad reflexes failed for a minute. And she was fine. She didn't even hit her head. She just held her head up. But she held her head up because she's done it enough times to know if she doesn't, she's going to hit her head and it sucks even more. And she's going to get wise enough to know that she shouldn't keep doing it in the first place. Like, you only get to know these things by doing them. And realize, and like, becoming wise to experience. God is the only one that can see it all. And so he knows what's wise and what is good for us and what is not. And sometimes what is bad for us is things we like. You know? But people will do things, will be like, well, if it's bad for me, then why did God make me like it? It's like, well, dude, heroin is pretty enjoyable, I would imagine. I've never done it, but otherwise, why would people do it? Because it seems to destroy people's lives, but people still do it. It's like, why? Because it's enjoyable. That doesn't mean that you should do it. It's like, we have freedom of will. There is no, like, if he's going to make you, what that means is actually, it means that you have the ability to make choices. And you have freedom of will yourself. And also, you have to remember that your will is in the context of his will. And his will is more powerful than yours. And so if you align your will with his, then yeah, like, that's the best way to win, because that's really the only way to win. But if you are doing things that are contrary to his will, like, which you do have the freedom to do, because that's the only way for there to be a you in the first place, then yeah, you're going to also have the opportunity to like do things that he doesn't want. I don't know. This is not that difficult. It's not just some irrational person or being who just hates his own creations. I'm sure he gets angry, but like, so do parents. I don't know. Sam Harris is somebody who was raised in a secular Jewish household, just like Sam Harris probably was, and who probably ended their theological, who never really had a theological education, but whatever I did have, I ended it at like 13. My parents were like, "You just want to keep going to Hebrew school?" And I was like, "No." After my bar mitzvah, I never went back. And that's not even necessarily like theology. It's like we were memorizing stories in the Bible, and we were learning Hebrew, and we weren't talking about God that much, actually. And in my house, nobody talked about God. And I'm pretty sure that's pretty similar for Sam Harris. And you can't have that kind of limited experience with something and actually understand it. You just can't. And he clearly doesn't. And it's like it is misleading him. When you say what is God? Who is God? God is sentient existence itself. Existence is someone. That's God. That's it. And that someone has always existed, can't not exist, has their own will and their own feelings, and also chose to make others within himself. That's it. That's God. Very simple, actually. But you have to like deduce that, actually. You can't just look to one religion or another, and believe that there are also fairy tales, and then try and deduce the inaccurate description of God from books you don't understand and don't believe are even true. It just doesn't make sense. But you can see that he knows that this does give ammunition to the theists. Otherwise, he wouldn't even say it. It's like, this is not to give ammunition to the theists. Maybe actually it does give ammunition to the theist, or at least it means that it takes away ammunition from the anti-theist. And yeah, I will say most theists don't actually do a good job at presenting their logical, non-specifically scriptural explanation for God. They don't. Actually, I know very few of them that ever succeed at that. And that's because their physics and secular and fluency in secular language is not there either. You kind of have to be probably someone like me. And so I don't know. Like he's I don't know if it's right to say it does give ammunition to the theists, but there's nothing but evidence for theism if you know what theism means.
So it doesn't give you religion, certainly
not Abrahamic religion. But the materialist can say, listen, it's nowhere written that we are going to get to a completed understanding of the world where there's no point at which we have to rely on some kind of axiom that is not itself self-explaining, right? We just have to we're pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps here, and this is where we're going to do it. That consciousness clearly emerges because we have it. We know we're social primates because we've studied biology up to this point.
Irrelevant.
Human brains certainly seem to be the locus of consciousness in the case of each human. When you cut people's heads off, it seems to disrupt their conscious functioning. And when people are dead, they seem to stay dead.
That doesn't mean that it's the locus of consciousness. It can be the entanglement point of information strings of multiple perspectives, which is probably what it is. That's why it looks like a big tangled ball of strings, is because it's taking your information from here and from there and from there and from there and from there and from there, and it's tangling it all up into entangling it all together. But it's not the locus of your you-ness. Like what's interesting is, like I say this, it's not cutting someone's head off is, you can shoot someone in the stomach, and if you wait long enough, they will also die, you know? So it's not just about like cutting someone's head off, seems to like take away consciousness. So many things will take away consciousness. Put somebody in an airtight chamber and pump all the air out. Their consciousness is, their embodied sentience seems to disappear, but I actually don't think that their sentience disappears. It's just that it's not embodied anymore, because you've disrupted the bodily structures that are necessary to exist for it to like inherit. You've damaged the container, but it doesn't mean that, so it can't be in there anymore, but like, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's like pilot. It's like you can damage the plane and it can't, they can't fly anymore, but that doesn't mean the pilot's gone. Like the pilot's just not in the plane, but not the best analogy, but it's close enough. And he's, I wonder, this is like a real like experiment. I asked my dad this because my dad's a doctor, and I was like, Dad, if you and I got a brain transplant and my brain went into your body and your brain went into my body, do you now have my body and I have your body? Or do you now have my brain and I have your brain? And he was like, you have my body and I have your body. He thinks that it's in the brain. He's wrong, but like he's of the same opinion as Sam Harris. And my dad is a great doctor, but he's also wrong about this. It's not relevant to actually like most somebody's ability to cure a physical ailment. But I wonder if we actually ever did this experiment. Like, could you actually do it? What if I got someone else's brain and put into my head because my brain was damaged? And like, what if it was somebody, all of a sudden I got really good at music because I liked hearing myself play, and I liked chocolate and I didn't before. What if that's what happens instead of like, it's a different, you just now have a different body? We have no idea, actually. And the thing is that I think, I don't know if it would always be the same result, actually. When that would be the most interesting thing, is it might be, and I think it's more likely that instead of, this is assuming that it's even possible, instead of it being people are swapping bodies, I would assume that sometimes it would be you're swapping bodies and sometimes you're swapping brains, which is part of your body. Like, that's the thing. It's like, that's why this is it doesn't make sense. But I mean, like, the rest of your body. I think intentionality will matter, and even God's decision would matter. So it might not be the same result every time, which would be fascinating. But I think it's that you would change how you are, but not who you are. Or it'd be like getting a heart transplant. It would give you new abilities. It would change a bit about how you are, but it's not going to be like a different person in a new body. It'd be like the same person with a different brain. We don't know though, until somebody does it, if somebody can even do it. But it is the most interesting. If it's possible, the results of that experiment will be the most interesting experiment in the world. Actually, it would change how we thought of so much. The problem is like, you probably need like two healthy people to consent to do this experiment, and nobody's going to do it. And if they do consent to do it, I would argue whether or not they're like that healthy. I think that's it, guys. Yeah, that's it. Anyways, please hit the like button, and share this. Comment any timestamps that you think would make good clips. hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification. I have a Discord server if you want to join. I'm trying to be more active in it. I'm failing lately, but it is a really good group. In the past, we've been very consistently had calls every week, but it's going to be more sporadic than every week. I'm aiming for every month. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. Again, I'm telling everybody my goals, but don't give up on me is what I'm saying to the Discord server. It's a really good group, and we have really good calls on there when we have calls, and people, even if I'm not on a call, it's a great group of people. So if you want to join, private message me on Instagram and I'll send you the link. With that, thank you, and good night.